Whether you're looking to build a website for your business, your hobby, your podcast, or just for fun, Pair Networks is your go-to web hosting partner. Not only do we have the lowest domain price in the industry, starting at just $11, we've got hundreds of stunning website templates to help you stand out from the crowd. You're not a techie? Not a problem. With our easy DIY site builders, you can launch your impressive website without any technical know-how. And when it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. Check out pair.com today to learn more. PAIR.com.
What's that? This just in. We're hosting a live stream kickoff show to usher in Hug Girl Summer!
I can't snort like you can. I'm kind of jealous.
Well, I'll teach you at our live show.
Amazing. So join us on June 1st. This is a Saturday at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time for an evening of summer-inspired true crime cases.
Yeah, Lucy and I are each doing a case.
Yes,
A full-blown
I love doing
case.
a case.
Yeah.
This is gonna be like an old school wine and crime show. And if you've missed us,
We're back,
here we are, baby. We're also gonna have cocktails, some Midwest dip recipes.
I can't wait to see what you whip up in the dip department.
Literally whipping it up.
Yep.
We're gonna have cats. We're gonna have babies. We're gonna have special announcements. We're gonna have so much more. We're going to be within a stone's throw of my oddities cabinet, so who knows?
Who knows who or what will make an appearance?
Exactly. Could be anything. This is a full-blown virtual live show, and you do not want to miss it.
I personally am working on a Hog Girl Summer craft cocktail that can be done with or without alcohol. It's going to be very versatile. I cannot wait to share the recipe with y'all a little early so you can get your ingredients, and then we can do a whole tutorial at the top of the show to make our cocktails together.
We're going to make our dips together too, baby.
Oh, it's going to be so fun. We might have a little cooking show moment.
Well, we love snacks.
We do love sex.
So tickets are $15 and include online replay. So if you're nervous that you're not actually available at that specific time, don't worry.
Don't worry.
Get your tickets now at wineandcrimepodcast.com.
And we cannot wait to kick off the summer with you, Hogs!
See, I'm bad at it.
That was so cute. Wine and Crime contains graphic and explicit content which may not be suitable for some listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
Listening to Wine and Crime, the podcast where two friends chug wine, chat true crime, and unleash their West Minnesotan accents.
Oh, we're unleashing our West Minnesotan accents.
I don't know what came over me.
I don't either, but I don't ask questions, bitch. I just roll with it.
I'm feeling staccato today. Staccato.
If you get stuck in a bit, you know I will also get stuck in a bit right there with you.
That's because you're a supportive friend.
You'll never be in a bit alone on my watch.
Literally never.
Literally never. What did you say? You said this in an episode recently. What is life if not just one long bit?
It is one long bit. What if we were talking about impersonation or not being your true self, just constantly lying? And it's well, what? I mean, what do you do?
A bit. How are you out here existing? Are you telling the truth?
What is your personality if not a bit?
Are you letting people know your true self?
No.
Ugh.
No one wants that.
I mean, no one wants it, but they all got it. I forced it upon you. Anyway, I'm Amanda.
I'm Lucy. It's a long bit.
Welcome to my
identity is a long bit.
Welcome to my personal hell that I have put on all of you for 7+ years.
More than that. We've known each other since we were
Hence
12.
The plus. Yeah, not you specifically. I mean, the listeners. For once, I wasn't fucking talking to you.
The royal you.
Yeah, the royal you. Us. All of us. The world.
Ish.
Anyway,
Don't
this
remind me
week
of that.
we have a very special gals pick, don't we?
We do have a special gals pick, and this it was inspired by a listener who I tried to get in touch with, and they no longer
They may be
have
in witness protection.
the email that they
Yeah.
used to have. So,
But if you're listening, we hope you're well, and no, we're not going to give any additional information about you at all.
because I didn't get your
For your
permission,
request.
but I hope you're okay. And
Yeah, check in maybe.
I hope you enjoy this episode because it was inspired by you. You know who you are. And if you don't now, you're going to at the end of my segment. So.
Oh, yeah.
Gals pick. On paper, this is a gals pick. And this gals pick today, we are discussing whistleblowers.
Yes, we are.
I'm jazzed about this. This was a fun one.
I saw this on the calendar before getting caught up on a small backlog, not much, like 2 episodes of Last Week Tonight with John Oliver.
We'll get to it.
Yeah, he did a Boeing episode.
We're gonna get to it.
I
haven't seen that episode, but I knew what you were talking about, and I really want you to pipe in when I discuss that in my segment.
You gotta watch it. Y'all know I fucking love John Oliver. I agree with almost everything that man talks about, which makes it easy for me to love him. But the episode was so good. So if you haven't watched it, I encourage everyone to steal their friend's HBO Max login and watch some Last Week Tonight. I'd loan you mine, but I'm already using Lucy's, so just kidding. I have my own. Well, I don't have my own. I have Bill's. Although I did get an alert today that someone in like Brooklyn logged into my Peacock account. And at first I was like, I'm going to change the password. I don't know who this is. And I was like, wait, I've given out my Peacock information to like 30 different people. I can't like change the password now and fuck over all the people that I did give it to just because I might have forgotten giving it to someone else who currently happens to be in New York. And I could be taking away Housewives from them, and I just couldn't do it. So if you are a stranger
in Brooklyn
out there with my Peacock login in Brooklyn, it's probably my brother-in-law, Pat. I'll text you later.
Does Pat live
maybe
in Brooklyn?
Yeah, Pat and Olivia live in Brooklyn.
Nice.
Shout out to Pat and Olivia.
Hi, guys.
We love them. But anyway, if you're using my Peacock login with permission, great. If you're not, kindly sign out. I'm blowing the whistle off of all of this.
Narc. What's the line between a whistleblower and a narc? Actually, we'll kind of get to it.
Great. I'm hoping you can answer that because I sure can't. I feel like narking is just like lower level, like mostly about drugs. Whistleblowing, I feel like has a more like corporate and government implications.
Well, whistleblowing has a very long history, and it definitely went through a narc stage.
We've been blowing for years.
Blew it the whole time.
It sucked and blew the whole time.
Blowing always feels like it goes on for years.
Yeah. Kind of drags on.
Kinda.
There's no better way to slow down time than to perform oral.
You think life's too long or too short? Try going down on someone more.
Start putting more dicks in your mouth. Then it'll start to feel really long. All right. Wow. This one off the rails. Should we drink alcohol?
Yes, please.
Yes.
Amanda, what's our wine crime pairing for whistleblowers?
Well, I am deviating from the norm today, and I was looking back on our time visiting the Watergate Hotel.
Oh my God. Gorgeous hotel. I love that.
So gorgeous and so pertinent to today's episode.
Mm-hmm.
And the Watergate, obviously post Nixon, but also like pretty long after that. I feel like the Watergate tried to kind of lay low to clean up its image after all that shit went down with the Nixon presidency. And then as we got
a fucking publicity consultant.
But then as they got more into, I'd say the modern era, like late 90s into 2000s, there was kind of a shift that we certainly felt going there in 2018? Is it the last time we were there? 2018, 2019, where certainly like the cocktail lounge and all of the elements of the hotel itself, we did get to stay there. It was really lovely. Have kind of leaned into its history and not necessarily like not honoring like Nixon, but honoring the people that really did risk their lives to expose the corruption that was going on in the White House. And I think it's pretty cool that like this staple of government like scandal has just decided like, you know what? No, we're not going to shy away from this. We're going to like preserve the legacy of what was exposed here and kind of honor it in our own sort of cheeky way. And so over the years, they've had cocktails and menu items that are like nods to what went down at the Watergate. And in 2022, they added a handful of new drinks to their menu that are dedicated to whistleblowers. So I wanted to go over some of these and share a recipe for one of the ones, like the Whistleblower Cocktail that they have on their menu. And this is from a really fun article written in Thrillist by Jess Mayhew in 2022, who did this little write-up about the Watergate. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but just some fun highlights from it. The hotel, of course, is the site of the June 17th, 1972 break-in of the Democratic National Committee headquarters that led to an explosive expose in the Washington Post and Nixon's eventual resignation. Ahead of the infamous burglary's 50th anniversary and timed with new Starz series Gaslit, which I did not watch. Did you watch that? I don't have Starz. Do I need to get Starz?
I don't have it either.
Maybe we need to share one.
I had the Showtime like add-on on one of those fucking apps. But
well, listeners, get at us in the comments and let us know if we should invest in co-owning a Starz subscription so we could watch Gaslit, because I do love watching stuff about the Watergate
historical dramas.
Yeah. The Watergate Hotel's next whiskey bar, which we went to and we love,
oh my God,
is featuring a special cocktail menu dedicated to whistleblowers, freedom of speech, and the power of the press. Quote, the whole team embraces the history of the Watergate, says the hotel's lead bartender, Cal Lemma. Instead of shying away from it, why not educate people about what it's like to have this history in your own backyard? I agree. I think that's pretty fucking cool. So at this time for the 50th anniversary, which was a couple years ago, I think a couple of these are still on their menu. The hotel was debuting 3 new cocktails to punctuate the era even more. The Whistleblower with chili pepper tequila, peppercorn agave, Rinomato Scuro, which I'm not 100% sure what that is, but I hope we'll find out. Lime juice and a chili powder rim comes garnished with an actual toy whistle.
Well, it's spicy enough. That'll blow your whistle.
And represents the boldness of coming forward with the truth and sticking by the story.
Dang.
Which I'm in love. Then they have a barrel-aged smoke and mirror cocktail.
Oh.
It's made with hickory-smoked Kenobi Kyoto dried gin, presented with smoke emanating from a glass like cloche, like this little cover thing.
I love a cloche.
And incorporates yuzu dry vermouth, which represents, quote, when the smoke cleared to reveal what really went down behind the scenes with Nixon.
Oh.
Obsessed. And this one is like, I think a little more timeless. It's called The Postworthy, and it's a nod to the newspaper that broke the story with Woodinville whiskey, ginger cordial, lemon juice, basil, and rose water. And the rose water is to signify DC's like famous cherry blossoms.
That
just sounds delicious. But the Whistleblower Cocktail recipe, kind of more broken down, includes 1.5 ounces of chili pepper tequila, dealer's choice, 1/2 ounce of lime juice. Also, if you have a favorite tequila, you can just get like a mason jar and pick out chili peppers that you like, fresh ones, and do your own little infusion for a couple days before you make it. Even if you did it overnight, it would still work. So 1.5 ounces chili pepper tequila, 1/2 ounce of lime juice, 3/4 ounces of that peppercorn agave. That sounds absolutely phenomenal. Imagine that in like a tequila version of a Bloody Mary.
A Bloody Maria.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, that's exactly what that is. That would be so good.
Yum.
1/4 Rinomato Scuro. Again, I'm not sure what that is. and then chili powder for your rim, and you serve it over ice, and you're ready to go. Okay, so Renomado Scuro is a bitter. It's a type of bitters.
Oh.
So it just adds a little...
So it's just a little dose.
A little flavor dip.
Doesn't sound like it's a crucial ingredient either, so if you don't have it,
Yeah, but that sounds amazing. That is the cocktail that I am recommending, literally the Whistleblower. And obviously, if you have a tiny toy whistle to go with it, the more the merrier.
I mean, I'd pay a premium on a cocktail that comes with a toy. What's a Happy Meal?
Yeah.
Hello?
Right. That's the Happy Meal I want, is a cocktail that comes with a toy.
Happy hour Happy Meal.
Exactly. Anyway, cheers.
Oh, I'm drinking a Climbing Kites cannabis-infused seltzer. I'm really into these now.
Yeah, they're good. They're good.
This one's pineapple passion fruit flavored. Climbing Kites.
I actually have a weed shot upstairs in my fridge that I'm going to go grab while we take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors.
Let's all take a break to go get a little bit stoned before we start this.
Let's do that.
We'll be right back. Shout out to Claritin for supporting this episode and providing us with samples.
Truly the best. I love allergy season because it's like such a fun time of year, but my eyes and nose don't love allergy season. I get plugged up. I have that. You get in that cycle of like, do I have a cold? Are these just allergies? What is happening to my body, you know? Mm-hmm. But luckily for those of us who live with the symptoms of allergies, we can live Claritin Clear with Claritin D. This is designed for serious allergy sufferers. This is designed for serious allergy sufferers. Claritin D has 2 powerful ingredients in just one pill that relieve your allergy symptoms and decongest your nose so you can breathe better. You should be enjoying the great outdoors this season without the hindrance of allergies. This double action combination of prescription strength allergy medicine and the best decongestant available relieves sneezing, a runny nose, itchy and watery eyes. That's like the worst part for me. Itchy nose and throat, and sinus congestion and pressure with ease. I love it. It starts working super quickly. I know that especially when I travel, if I'm in a new place with new plants, I might get off the plane and all of a sudden I'm like, oh man, I gotta take my Claritin because my body's not used to these pollens. What am I doing?
Different latitude.
Yep. So I can pop one of those and I start to feel so much better. So I can just really enjoy my day in the outdoors. So if you're ready to live as if you don't have allergies, it's time to live Claritin Clear.
Fast and powerful relief is just a quick trip away. Find Claritin D at the pharmacy counter. Ask for Claritin D at your local pharmacy counter. You don't even need a prescription. Go to Claritin.com right now for a discount so you can live Claritin Clear. Use as directed.
It is warm outside, and Midwest warm is like a special kind of warm. It's very humid. You need some real breathable fabrics and some lightweight stuff. You gotta say goodbye to the jackets and sweaters. It's time to say hello to shorts and tees and, like, honestly, an entire wardrobe made of linen, because that's like the only fabric that my body agrees with when it gets this hot.
Truly.
So I wanted to update my wardrobe for the long haul without spending a fortune, and luckily I found Quince, and now I've got a lineup of timeless pieces that keep me looking effortlessly chic year after year. These are classics. It's not fast fashion. You're gonna love it.
It's like the cutest staples. Mm-hmm. So they also have premium European linen dresses, blouses, and shorts.
Rompers.
Starting at $30.
Yeah.
They've got these beautiful washable silk tops. They're absolutely timeless. 14 karat gold jewelry and so much more. Like, their jewelry is like understated, classic. They got stackable rings. I have a couple of those.
I'm obsessed with the rings you got. They're so cute.
Yes, and the best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. I was shocked looking through this website.
I know. It all is so high quality and the prices are amazing.
Mm-hmm. So by partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings onto you and me. Mm-hmm. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes, which obviously we love.
I'm obsessed with these navy blue wide leg, like linen drawstring pants that I got.
They're so cute.
They're so cute, and they could be like dressed up with like a cuter, more fashionable crop top and like a little pair of cute shoes, or they can be soups cash.
Or like barefoot at the beach.
Yup. In love. So get warm weather ready with Quince. Go to quince.com/wine for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/wine to get free shipping and 365-day returns. One more time, quince.com/wine, and treat your wardrobe.
Treat it.
Okay, Lucy, what is our background? And I hope to God's sake, maybe at least a tiny bit, we could fake some, I don't know, on whistleblowers.
I mean, I don't have any psych because I feel like whistleblowing is just like an allegiance to transparency and truthfulness. And yeah, if you're a good person.
Not letting governments get away with heinous shit.
Not even just
Slaughtering
governments,
people.
Corporations. We'll fucking get to it. So I guess I gotta shake my bones.
Shake them. I psychologically won't be well, but that's not the same as having psych.
I mean, there's always psych when it comes to the two of us because we're psychotic.
Correct. That's accurate,
in the delivery of the background. Okay.
Right.
So according to the National Whistleblower Center, a whistleblower is, quote, someone who reports waste, fraud, abuse, corruption, or dangers to public health and safety to someone who is in the position to rectify the wrongdoing.
To do fuck all about it.
We'll get to the fuck all.
Yeah.
According to Merriam-Webster, a whistleblower is, quote, one who reveals something covert or who informs against another. Ooh. So the word
I'm going to inform against you so hard.
I mean, go ahead.
I don't know what about.
I have like negative shame these days.
You snored like one tiny cute snore when we were sharing a room in Palm Springs. I'll blow the whistle off of that.
Sometimes I snore. You snored a little bit too.
Mm-hmm. We did.
I also had a nasty toot. I'm glad it didn't wake you up.
You did? Mm-hmm. Did it stink?
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean,
yeah, no, I
forgot where we
didn't wake up.
Oh, it's probably the ceviche.
We fucked up that ceviche. That shit didn't stand a chance. It was
so good.
We were just like, oh, acidic shrimp? Let's fucking go. And we were the only ones who ate
Cooked
it.
in juice? I don't get it, but I'm gonna eat it.
It sounds great. And then we shared a room. I probably also farted heinously.
Mm-hmm. Probably.
Didn't bother me none.
I didn't wake up. You didn't wake up. We're all good.
Great. Love it.
So the word whistleblower was initially used in the 19th century, but don't get confused. The concept was invented a long time before that. We'll get to it.
Blow the whistle.
Maybe whistles weren't invented till the 19th century.
Maybe.
I didn't do any research on whistles. The word was initially hyphenated, whistle hyphen blower, and was used to describe someone who blew a whistle.
I'm going to look up when whistles were invented.
Please do. I kind of want to know. Around the end of the 19th century, the word was applied to the referee in a sporting contest or the person who blew the whistle in an administration of rules and judgment.
Makes sense.
Shortly after that...
Keeping people in check.
Yeah, stay in the lines. Shortly after that, the word whistle began to be used metaphorically, like in the phrase, blow the whistle, which means to tell people publicly about something bad that someone is doing. And so that's how we get the word whistleblower.
Blow the whistle. Blow the whistle.
I don't. That's why I kind of glossed over the first time you sang it.
A whistle is an instrument which produces sound from a stream of gas, most commonly air. It may be mouth-operated or powered by air pressure, steam, or other means. Whistles vary in size from a small size whistle or nose flute. My dad rocks the nose flute. Type to a large multi-piped church organ. Whistles have been around since early humans first carved out a gourd or branch and found they could make sound with it.
Cute.
In prehistoric Egypt, small shells were used as whistles. Many present-day wind instruments are inheritors of these early whistles. So there isn't like we know when the first whistle was.
I don't know why I thought for any amount of time that whistles weren't invented until the late 19th century, but
Whistles were invented in like 2012, you guys. Fucking calm down.
can you whistle can you whistle with your mouth?
No, I can only whistle with my mouth sucking in. Like really faintly. My brother, Court Blortney, is a really good whistler.
Good whistler. My parents
and
are both good whistlers.
My brother-in-law David can do the like finger, like the really loud command an entire room finger whistle. My dream.
I mean, we both know
to
that
to make a sound that's louder than the sounds I can already make. That's my goal.
I command a room by.
I can't not respond to it. I had to put down what was in my hands. I'm so fucking conditioned by Lucy doing that shit.
By anyone doing it. Next time I'm in a crowded place with like millennials, I'm gonna do that.
We gotta try this at a live show.
Totally.
When we're trying to like get some control back. Because y'all get bucked.
When the drunk people won't stop heckling. It's like, you know what? No.
We're gonna just absolutely control all of you.
It is like a mind control. Oh my God.
It is. It's hypnosis.
It is. It really is. So that's my version of whistling.
I love it.
Okay, so the word whistleblower has two usages. We have a relatively non-pejorative synonym for a tattletale, based on ARC, defined by Merriam-Webster, and a legal one defined by the National Whistleblower Center. So according to the U.S. Department of Labor, an employer cannot retaliate against you for exercising your rights under the Department of Labor's whistleblower protection laws. The protections and remedies for whistleblowing vary depending on whether the individual is a federal employee or an employee of a federal contractor or subcontractor or grantee or subgrantee. I think that the government will protect you if you're blowing the whistle at like any level, but like the big ones have to do with federal employees.
Like there are more protections, basically, the more high level the blowing is. Yeah. That makes sense. I mean,
bigger risks.
That I know we're gonna fucking get to it, but like guys, a lot of stuff is making us lose sleep these days. I know it's hard to keep up with. I just don't sleep because there's so many reasons not to fucking sleep. But 2 Boeing whistleblowers a couple months apart, mysteriously dying by quote unquote suicide.
Please, we'll get to it. And only one of them was suicide, quote unquote.
I can't.
I know.
I can't.
It's fishy as fuck.
It's so scary.
It's definitely.
Follow the money, people.
Follow the fuck. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money there.
Follow the fucking money, man.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so 5 agencies.
As I pack a joint, like, follow the fucking money, man. They're all fucking after us.
They want to make you think the Space Needle is real.
You know what pisses me off so much, though, is that, like, we talked about this a little in the conspiracy theories episode. So many of the kind of cuckoo bananas, like, out there conspiracy theorists, I'm like, y'all, you're so close. Like, you're so close. Like, yes, these things are definitely fucking happening. The government's so corrupt. It's so, like, white supremacist. So many people are fucked and oppressed.
But then it's just one little thing that's like...
Yeah, and then you guys are like, pizza restaurants. And we're like, oh, no, that wasn't it.
It's kind of like when you see, like, a really cute shirt on, like, the sale rack. And you're like... This is so cute. And then you pull it out and there's like a random like distressed denim pocket sewn onto it. And you're like,
and it just ruins the whole shirt. You were so close. Yeah. You were so fucking close.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are 5 agencies that enforce whistleblower and anti-retaliation laws. And those are the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA. The Mine Safety and Health Administration, MSHA.
Okay.
The Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, or OFCCP. The Wage and Hour Division, WHIT. And the...
I'm sorry, what was that?
WHD, WHIT.
Oh, got it.
And the Veterans Employment and Training Service, or VETS. I also really have to admire an acronym where they clearly like worked backwards from it.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I like that.
Yeah, they want it to work.
Yeah. The earliest evidence of legal concepts resembling whistleblowing, or qui-tom.
Queefing.
So qui-tom.
Queetom.
Qui-tom is a shortened version of qui-tom domino rege quam pro se in hoc sequitur.
I wonder why we call it whistleblowing.
So this is Latin for who
rolls off the tongue.
This is Latin
blows
for
off the tongue.
Who brings the action for the king as well as himself, originated in ancient Rome. And before I go on, I do have to say that my good friend Ben Ben. He took Latin in like college as like his language. And up until like an hour ago, I was like, how fucking stupid and useless. Why would you like Latin? Like I make fun of him for it, but
now
when I was going through my notes, I was like, I need to know how to pronounce this. So I called him and he walked me through the pronunciation of it.
That's funny.
And he said,
he
said, I can't really be sure because the reason I took Latin is because you very rarely speak it out loud. It's mostly written.
It's mostly reading. And I love to read.
And apparently there's a difference between like church Latin and like street Latin.
Street Latin.
I just made up street Latin, but yeah. Qui-tom domino rege quam pro se in hoc sequitur.
But I do love who brings the action for the king as well as himself. Bring the action.
Bring the action. So basically that means that in ancient Rome, those who exposed wrongdoings were sometimes given a portion of the criminal's seized property in return for speaking up. So it's like, I saw that guy steal 10 loaves of bread. And then you tell the king, and the king's like, thank you for telling me. I award you 1 loaf of bread.
Oh, okay.
Similar practices were recorded in 17th century England. So, such as the Statute of Northampton granted qui-tom provisions to people who informed against those who allowed fairs to go on for too long. They're like, well, that's enough.
Shut that shit down. We're done.
That's it. The fair has gone on long enough.
That's enough. Okay? Pack it up. Get off my fucking lawn.
Yeah, literally.
You have strummed your lute long enough.
I have to think that it had something to do with like people just loitering and lingering and like drinking in like public spaces for too long.
Yeah,
people
and
are
just
like, okay,
not
let's
fucking leaving.
Fucking wrap it up. Closing time.
Yeah,
you don't have to go
babe.
home, but you can't stay here.
You cannot stay here.
By the 19th century, qui-tom mainly was used against those who violated laws regarding Christian Sunday observance, which is sort of what I was getting at when it's like narking. It's like, I didn't see Nancy at church on Sunday. I saw her gardening instead, and that's technically working.
I saw Goody Nancy in the garden.
Yes.
Toiling.
Literally
toiling.
Qui-tom officially ended in England with the Common Informers Act of 1951.
What?
That's how long these like narc laws were on the books.
That's like when my father was born.
Yeah. It's like within our parents' lifetime.
Yeah.
So the Common Informers Act abolished the principles and procedures concerning a common informer, aka a fucking tattletale. In the U.S., however, whistleblower laws were adopted in 1778. The Whistleblower Protection Act of 1778 was an act of Congress signed into law by the President of the Continental Congress, Henry Loren.
Mouth Congress.
Mouth Congress. Naval officer Richard Marvin and his associate Samuel Shaw suffered retaliation for reporting the wrongdoings on the part of a guy named Essex Hawkins, who was the commander-in-chief of the Continental Navy. So Hawkins was fucking around. He thought he was untouchable. And these 2 naval officers were like, nah, you suck, and we're going to tell on you.
We're telling. But then did you say the guys who told got in trouble? Or no?
So they at first were arrested and put in jail.
Yeah.
But they appealed to the Continental Congress for help. They were like, hey, we were just doing the right thing. Like, we were acting in your best interest.
Your best, like, we're standing by the crown, basically. We're giving you information.
Yes. Congress.
The U.S. Yeah, whatever.
Well, at the time
Wherever.
it was 1778. Yeah. There was no crown. It was just a really fresh country.
Confusing country.
Yeah. Confused. Congress responded by passing a law to protect the men and also future whistleblowers. So the Continental Congress even agreed to like pay back the cost of Marvin and Shaw's defense to ensure that they had proper legal representation.
And probably like show good faith to future tattletales.
Yeah, because they're just sitting in jail. And presumably they don't have much money to like hire representation. So the Congress was like, you're right. And we're going to set a precedence for future potential whistleblowers to not be afraid to blow said whistle because we're going to cover your court costs, your lawyer's fees, blah, blah, blah.
Step right up and
Encourage you
blow,
to come
baby.
forward. The Founding Fathers also helped the defendants by authorizing the full and public release of the records relating to the removal of Hawkins, who was the little shit.
So it's stricken, essentially.
It wasn't stricken. They were like, we're going to tell the public exactly what this guy did, exactly what you're coming forward to tell about.
Oh, okay.
Made
They
everything
shared it.
public. So this kind of ties in with like the freedom of the press stuff, which we'll kind of get to later.
Okay, I don't know. I got the word release confused in my mind.
With release. So
Yeah.
I'll read it again just in case anyone else is confused. The Founding Fathers also helped the defendants by authorizing the full and public release of records relating to the removal of Hawkins.
There it is. Okay.
Ultimately, Marvin and Shaw prevailed in court, and the Continental Congress paid $1,418 in legal fees, which time money converter is about, it's just under 32 grand.
Mm-hmm.
In 1863, President Lincoln signed the False Claims Act into law. So this act aimed to incentivize citizens to help the federal government police rampant military contracting fraud during the Civil War.
Oh.
So
we'll kind of get to
military contracting fraud, I'm sure there were probably like local, like smaller divisions who promised to help the military succeed in their ambitions and then got paid by the military and then never followed through with it.
There was also, which we'll get to in my case, falsification of circumstances like requiring military intervention
In order to get said military contracts?
Yep. And well, not even just for the contracts, but like, at least in my case, it's more like for the bloodlust of it all.
Oh.
Because there was still a lot of active genocide of indigenous people happening in the United States and claims of violence that sometimes were real, but I mean, how do you expect people to defend themselves when you're taking their land? But that's neither here nor there. Claims of violence were way overblown to essentially authorize military intervention or military contracts against indigenous peoples that were just trying to fucking figure out where they're supposed to go and survive.
Literally live their lives.
Yeah. We'll get to that.
I can't wait.
There was so much happening. And with so little feasible oversight because our lines of communication were so limited.
And the country was relatively new. And especially during the Civil War, I mean, the whole country was fractured. Everybody in the country was
motivations
split.
were all the fuck over the place. Money was all the fuck over the place.
Yeah.
It was a wild
We had
time.
two different kinds of money at the time. Yeah, the Civil War was a fucking mess. So the False Claims Act, I can see why this was a necessity. In 1986, Congress modernized the False Claims Act and amended it so it is part of our Constitution.
Got it.
Constitution? Yeah, it's an act. Whatever.
Sure.
It's it's law. It's codified. Okay.
It's codified. Don't email us. I don't care.
Okay. So now we're to the point where you were mentioning earlier.
Yes, Boeing.
In the news right now are the Boeing whistleblowers, so I did want to share a little bit about that. So a little bit of background. Over the past year, there have been a string of incidents related to Boeing. And when I say year, I really mean like couple of decades, but they really ramped up in the last year. It's ramped up
in the news, yeah.
So in January of
with doors flying off. Anyway, okay.
A door plug. An Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9's door plug blew off in midair, leading to the grounding of all 171 MAX 9 jets by the FAA and instigating an investigation. So, by the way, there's a picture on the drive, which will be on the blog. A door plug is essentially a false door instead of a functioning exit door. It weighs about 60 pounds, but it's the size and shape of an actual door. So this falling off, like people's possessions got sucked out of the plane because it was like a hole. It was a 5 foot, 4 or 5 foot hole in the side of the plane.
If you weren't strapped in.
Yeah.
If you were not adhering to the pilot's recommendation of keeping your seatbelt on while seated, you would have been sucked out the window in that window seat.
So I saw an article, I was doing research. Some guy in like, I don't remember where, I want to say it was like Vancouver-y, somewhere around there, was like just walking and he saw a full iPhone under like a bush and he picked it up. He just assumed somebody dropped it. But like, I think the screen was kind of cracked.
Yeah.
And there was just the little end of the white charging cord plug still in the phone, but it had ripped off the rest of the cord. And it didn't have like a lock, like the screen wasn't locked. So he just opened it trying to like figure out whose like phone it was so he could get it back to this person. It was on airplane mode and it was open to like a flight, like a boarding pass.
Boarding pass. Oh.
And so when he heard, like right after that, about this fucking Alaska airplane that the door blew off, he knew that it got sucked the fuck out of the airplane. Ripped the cord. Ripped the charging cord.
No.
Isn't that incredible?
I already don't like flying.
Well, and
I really don't like it now.
If you, like me, were wondering why a door plug is even a thing, it's because...
Right. What do we need a fake door for? Where's the real door?
So, Boeing manufactures airplanes for different airlines, one of which is Lion Air in Indonesia. And also United, American, Southwest, and Alaska Airlines. They all fly the Boeing 737 MAX.
Yep.
But depending on what country you're in, they have different limitations on how many passengers are on each airplane.
Oh,
so because some countries can pack more passengers onto a plane than other countries, then they have different requirements about how many emergency exits are needed. And because each emergency exit has like the blow up slide and the handle and the thing, the more emergency exits or frankly like working doors on an airplane, the more maintenance is required. So it's cheaper to have fewer functional exits on an airplane. So they don't put any more on than is necessary. So some of these airplanes have door plugs instead of actual doors because they have fewer passengers on that airplane. For example, airlines that operate in the United States, because Americans demand more leg room, just more room in general. So we have fewer people on average on each flight, like maximum number of passengers than, say, a flight in Egypt.
Which, like, you know what? I'm fine with that. I'm fine with fewer people being on the flight. I'm gonna
that's what the door plug is all about.
Right. So I'm gonna end up with a door plug.
Sometimes they're functioning doors. Sometimes they're just plugs because we don't want an extra door because it's more expensive to maintain. And all of this comes down to the expenses because an airplane costs a shitload of money. They make a lot of money on these airplanes, which is essentially the root of all of this Boeing stuff.
Of all evil.
Okay, so when I said that this is over the past year, I have to remind us that this is only a few years after the 737 MAXs had a nearly 2-year grounding for 2 separate plane crashes that killed a total of 346 people. So,
which is like absurd. That's like unheard of.
So within, I think it was within several years, but still several years.
It was too close
too
together.
Often to excuse. So,
yeah, we've like had modern aviation technology for too long
for this shit to happen.
For this shit to be happening. It has to be some kind of negligence to save money. It always fucking is at this kind of shit.
Yep. So these 2 crashes happened in Ethiopia and Indonesia. And this is a quote from Fast Company, quote, destined to profit $12 million on the sale of each $121 million MAX plane. They profited $12 million for each fucking plane.
Each plane.
There was significant incentive for Boeing to press on with the MAX development, even though it had already proved to be a dangerously problematic aircraft design.
Also, flight attendants who are on these aircraft the most and therefore at the highest risk of like statistical probability of a crash are paid on average, at least in the US, like maybe 37 grand a year.
What?
They make like 30 bucks an hour on some of these major airlines.
Jesus.
They can make around $30 an hour for flight time. So if your flight is delayed by hours,
they're just not
and
getting paid.
The flight attendant had to be at the airport for the original schedule and it's delayed, they're just not paid for those hours. And if you're sitting on the tarmac, even though they're on the flight, on the plane, sometimes those aren't billable hours either.
No.
It's like literally takeoff to land.
That should not be an hourly job. No, ridiculous.
It absolutely shouldn't.
Especially when they put up with assholes like us. I mean, you and I are assholes, but like people in general are assholes.
And these companies that like make these planes, and yeah, it's fucked up. It's fucked up.
And each one of these planes,
this kind of wealth is so sick.
Each one of these planes can carry like, I don't know if it's the MAX plane, but a plane of roughly that size can carry like 280 passengers plus the crew. Like one of those fuckers going down it's
not good.
Really scary.
It's really scary. It's really bad.
Remember that German pilot who like just flew into the side of a mountain?
I mean,
a few years ago.
No, I don't. But that's how my grandpa died, basically.
Yeah, it was like a commercial pilot, and he just decided to, we're going down into the mountain.
Yeah, that wasn't how my grandpa died. He was doing like a geological survey of South America.
Oh my God, I forgot about that.
In like a single engine plane when my mom was like 6 and he crashed. And
so wild.
perished.
Did they ever recover him? His
did.
Remains.
It took a while though.
Wow.
But yeah,
That's
they did get him.
Wild.
They found him.
Okay, so about these Boeing whistleblowers, back in March of this year, a 62-year-old man by the name of John Barnett, who was a former Boeing quality control manager who went public with his concerns about safety issues with the company's commercial airplanes, was found dead in his car in a Holiday Inn parking lot of a, quote, apparent gunshot wound to the head. This discovery came the day after he testified in a deposition related to the string of problems he says he identified at Boeing's plant where he once helped inspect the 787 Dreamliner aircraft before its delivery to the customers.
Interesting timing.
Such weird, random timing.
What a coinky dink.
So his lawyers who represented him for this deposition stuff said, quote, he was in very good spirits and really looking forward to putting this phase of his life behind him and moving on. We didn't see any indication he would take his own life. No one can believe it. Which obviously when people die by suicide, very frequently people around them are like, I had no idea
Shocked.
this was coming. And that is just the nature of, mental
That's
health.
fair.
And it's totally fair.
This isn't that, though.
I don't think this is
This
that.
isn't that. Mm-mm.
Barnett, who spent decades working for Boeing at its plants in Everett, Washington, and North Charleston, South Carolina, had repeatedly alleged that Boeing's manufacturing practices had declined and that rather than improve them, managers had pressured workers not to document potential defects and problems. They're just like, well, if you don't write it down, it doesn't
Then
hurt
it
our
doesn't
numbers,
exist.
and we can still ship this $120 million some plane out the door because that's what they care
Great.
about.
Yep.
They want their $12 million as frequently as possible.
Mm-hmm.
He and some other employees had spoken to the New York Times back in 2019 about what he called shoddy manufacturing problems, accusing the company of adopting a culture that prioritized raw numbers and profits over actual quality, and by extension, passenger safety.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time, Barnett told the newspaper, quote, as a quality manager at Boeing, you are the last line of defense before a defect makes it out to the flying public. And I haven't seen a plane out of Charleston yet that I would put my name on saying that it's safe and airworthy.
Oh, my God.
Isn't that sick?
Not a one.
Not one. He worked there for years. All of them are fucked.
We fly a lot.
We really do. Actually, when I was getting on my flight, when we went to Palm Springs last weekend, who did I text? Oh, I texted Ben, the Latin guy. I was like, I'm boarding my flight, not a Boeing.
Ben is not the Latin guy. The guy, your friend who
the Latin
speaks
guy.
Latin.
The guy who took Latin in college is what I meant. He's very white.
Ben, the Latin guy.
The Latin guy.
No.
He's my Latin friend. That's not what I meant.
No, I know. Just wanted to clear that up.
What if I called my friend my Latin friend?
I can't. We'd be having a very different conversation. I knew
Latin
what you were
guy.
saying.
Thank you for clearing. I didn't even think about that. Okay. But yeah, I was boarding
the Latin guy.
I was texting him, then I was like, I'm boarding my flight, parentheses, not a Boeing.
Oh, I can't. For my cousin's wedding in Mexico, we had to fly in a Boeing 737 MAX, and I was freaking out.
Well, Delta doesn't use Boeing 737s, just so you know. They're not on the list.
Oh, that's just weird because I flew Delta to Mexico,
Oh.
and it was the 737 MAX.
Well, maybe they've changed since the last time the article I was referencing was written.
Yeah, I don't know.
Whatever. Just check it out. You can check when you buy your flights, I think.
Yeah, that's what I did. I looked on my ticket and I was like, oh no.
Oh, no. Okay, so that was the first guy that died under mysterious circumstances. And just like a week and a half ago, as we record this now, a guy named Joshua Dean, 45 years old, died. Mm-hmm. He was a former quality auditor at a key Boeing supplier who was one of the first to raise concerns about improperly drilled holes in the fuselage of the 737 MAX jets. He worked at a company called Spirit Aerosystems, not to be confused with Spirit Airlines. These are two different things, although, don't fly Spirit. Spirit's really fishy, too. Do what you got to do. Mm-hmm. Not gatekeeping travel, but the fees on Spirit are awful. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he worked at Spirit Aerosystems, which was a major Boeing supplier. His family reports that he had quickly fallen into critical condition after being diagnosed with a MRSA bacterial infection.
Ooh.
His death was really odd, not just because it was completely unexpected and unanticipated, but also the level of infection. He was diagnosed with MRSA, which was the big one, but also several different infections and viruses. And when they looked at his lungs in a bronchial scan thing, they were the doctors were we've never seen an
this
infection
before.
like this.
It's almost like a poisoning.
It was it was just too much. Like,
Yeah.
the infection did too much. The infection was doing extra.
What the fuck? Ugh.
According to NPR, quote, Dean's mother and stepfather describe him as a studious and honest man, a health nut who rarely drank and attended church regularly, which I'm not saying that people who attend church are immune to
Right.
MRSA, but like,
Of course.
he was very
This is not
straight-laced,
someone-
very straight and narrow, didn't color outside the lines.
Yeah, this isn't somebody who was like commonly engaging in high-risk behaviors.
Yeah, risky behaviors. Yep.
Yeah.
His career was helped by his prodigious memory and attention to detail. So Joshua took his job very seriously and grew increasingly frustrated with what he described as a, quote, culture of not counting defects correctly at Spirit Aerosystems. During he did 2 interviews in January with like, I think they were both with NPR. So he had been fired last April, which he said was in retaliation for speaking out, but you know, Spirit was just like, no, he did X, Y, and Z or whatever.
Sure.
But during these 2 interviews back in January of 2024, Dean said that Spirit pressured employees not to report defects in order to get planes out of the factory faster. So he tells NPR, quote, now, I'm not saying they don't want you to go out there and inspect a job, because they do. But if you make too much trouble, you will get the Josh treatment. You will get what happened to me.
What
So
the
he
fuck?
referred to it as the Josh treatment, which was that they fired him and said it was because of some other reason, but it was like definitely not. Because he was so detail oriented and so good at his job, and he prioritized like his job so much that there was no fucking reason why this dude was fired. Because he was the fucking,
Like a model employee.
and he was a quality auditor. Like, you'd think
Yeah.
that they'd want to keep
That's
these
a
people
high-
around.
That's a really important position, I think most people would say.
And one of the things that he brought up was that the company laid off a lot of employees who had been there for a long time and knew how to do their job well. They laid them off during the COVID pandemic. And then the people that they hired after that just were not as
cheaper.
skilled. They were probably cheaper. They didn't have the experience. And Boeing/Spirit were just like, whatever, we got to get these planes out. Just fucking do it. So he had given testimony, I believe in January of this year, in a shareholder lawsuit against Spirit, basically to these claims that they had this culture of not counting defects properly and blah, blah, blah. And also his termination as retaliation. So that was in like January. And now here in early May, he got a weird MRSA infection out of fucking nowhere. Also,
I like it.
to add to what you were saying about the Watergate Hotel, like kind of turning around and embracing the scandal, I know that the Watergate Hotel wasn't like at fault for all this stuff. It was
No.
the Republican.
Theirs was more of a PR image adjustment.
I do think it's worth noting that now, since this second Boeing dude has died, Boeing is trying to revamp its public perception, and they are now, quote, celebrating whistleblowers who bring up any sort of problems within the company. Like, they're being very public about, like, no, we want these people to speak up.
No, please do come forward. We want to know who you are.
Passenger safety is the top priority.
It's
so not money. It's so important. We're celebrating people who speak up and make our company and our product better.
And then we're swiftly taking them out.
Well, okay, now you're celebrating them because it's become very public.
And very obvious what's happening.
Even if these 2 dudes did die the way that they're saying that they did, which I don't think is the truth personally, they're still bringing to light all of these issues with these companies that, like, I don't want to fucking intentionally fly on one of these airplanes. That's insanity.
Yeah, no.
So sort of like the Nixon thing, once it's public enough that it's very apparent that you fucked up, they're going to turn around and spin it and be like, oh, wait, We're embracing it. We're embracing our history. Like, oh, okay.
If you could start the blowing, it will get to the process where it blows itself, and then they scramble trying not to blow their load, and it never works for them.
No.
Like these cute little PR marketing, not dealing with the actual issue, not fixing the root of the problem shit only lasts so long.
It's giving Pride Month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, we love the gays.
Yeah.
Look, here's a rainbow.
Yeah.
Will you shut up now?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's that shit.
Yeah.
Look, a rainbow. Will you shut up now, you piece of shit?
We're gay for the next 30 days.
30 days. That's all you get.
30-day gay.
And then we're going to go back to not asking and not telling. We're done. The old ways.
I'm done telling whether or not I'm asked.
I'm always asking because consent is key.
You are always asking. It's kind of intrusive. So to round us out, I have some of the most famous whistleblowers in U.S. history. And a little recap of what they did.
Love it.
So the first one, we've got W. Mark Felt. Do you know who that is?
No.
Deep Throat.
Oh, I know who that is.
Felt was the secret informant to Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein, the Washington Post reporters who broke the Watergate scandal in 1972. Mm-hmm. For more than 30 years, Felt's identity remained unknown. So it was like only relatively recently that they said this guy's full name. When the information on Nixon's involvement in Watergate was leaked, Felt was the associate director of the FBI, the second in command position at the Bureau. He was essentially the point man for the FBI investigation into the crime. So he knew all the details.
He knew the intricacies.
All the tea. According to Woodward and Bernstein's books, Woodward spoke with Felt 17 times between June of 1972 and November of 1973 via phone and in-person meetings. The moniker Deep Throat referred to the controversial but widely viewed pornographic film of the same time that was released in 1972. Remember the movie Dick?
Yes.
I love that movie, and I love the soundtrack.
Me too. Yeah.
Nixon also hated pornography and thought it was morally corrupt. Lame. So whether or not that has anything to do with the moniker of Deep Throat, if it was like a jab at Nixon, it's kind of funny.
It's like, you're so chaste, we're going to call you fucking Deep Throat. Deal with that.
Yeah. Gonna link you forever in history with a guy named Deep Throat.
Yep. Bye.
Felt was accused of being the informant in the New York Times by William Ruckelshaus. This led to Felt's resignation and the end of his 31-year career with the FBI, which I feel is unfair. In 1978, Felt was indicted for ordering FBI agents to search the homes of the Weather Underground members and other leftist groups without a warrant. Okay, maybe that's not so unfair, because that's shitty. He was found guilty in 1980 and then pardoned by President Reagan in 1981. During this time, Felt wrote a memoir and claimed that he was not Deep Throat. However, in 2005, he announced in a Vanity Fair article that he was indeed Deep Throat. Why are you covering? Maybe because he was pardoned by a Republican president and didn't want to
I mean, yeah, I kind of don't blame him for being really apprehensive about owning that. You know what I mean? Like the risk doesn't just go away.
No.
Even if you're pardoned, the public opinion is still out there. I mean, people were fucking thirsty for blood around this time.
It was also only 8 years later.
Yeah. I don't know. I kind of get it.
Yeah, I get it too. Also, considering what a lot of these whistleblowers went through that are way worse than a few years in prison.
People fucking died.
People died.
People were tortured. If he wants to lay low, even if it's 8 years later, and you're like, we're all over this, don't worry about it. It's he's not over it.
Yeah.
That's fucked up. Those are fucked up times. He's still probably pissed his pants. Ugh. I would be.
I pretty much am.
I'm always pissing my pants. If I cough too hard, if I laugh too hard.
Oh, girl. If I sneeze while I'm sitting cross-legged,
game over.
I have to change my underwear.
Yeah.
Sometimes my
home.
leggings.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. If it's a funny enough joke, I'm blasting all the way through the pants.
All the way through.
It's done.
Okay, so my next whistleblower is Chelsea Manning. Ever heard of her? In 2010, Manning, a U.S. Army intelligence analyst, released the largest set of classified documents in U.S. history, primarily published by WikiLeaks. These documents included information describing the detention, abuse, and torture of prisoners, and a whole lot more than just that.
Yep.
According to Britannica, my lava, she had contacted former hacker Adrian Lamo? Probably not Lamo.
Probably not.
Lamo, for their help, and Lamo notified the army about what Chelsea Manning was up to. She was arrested and ultimately charged with more than 24 offenses, including the capital offense of aiding the enemy. So what an old-timey offense.
Right? Ew. Get over yourself.
She was eventually found not guilty of aiding the enemy. Still, she was convicted of numerous other counts, including espionage and theft. She was sentenced to 35 years in prison. While in prison, Manning, who was born a male, sought treatment for, quote, gender dysphoria, but the Department of Defense refused to give her treatment, and I'm assuming refused to house her with other women.
Oh, yeah, people that aligned with her gender identity.
In 2016, Manning staged a hunger strike for 10 days until Army officials finally agreed to her treatment and also gender reassignment. In 2017, President Obama commuted the bulk of her remaining sentence, and she was released from prison in May of the same year.
Wow.
Okay, next whistleblower is Frank Serpico. Serpico was the first police officer to testify about corruption in the New York Police Department openly.
Interesting.
So through the late 60s and early 70s, he worked as a plainclothes police detective in Brooklyn and the Bronx to expose vice racketeering. That would have been so wild. What a crazy career at that time in particular.
Yeah, for real.
In 1967, he reported police corruption, including bribes and payoffs, but nobody fucking did anything about it. He eventually contributed to a 1970s New York Times story on systemic corruption within the NYPD, which led to the formation of the Knapp Commission. A Knapp Commission sounds amazing, but it's K-N-A-P-P.
Yeah, I figured, but I was ready to
I'm going to form my
work for
own
the government
Knapp
for the
Commission.
first time ever. Yeah.
The commission was created to investigate the allegations of police corruption. And as a consequence of Serpico's testimony before the commission, he was ostracized by his peers. Of course he was.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could expect to continue on in your job after doing that, which is why it's so brave and important to speak up.
Right.
Many believe that he was set up to be shot during a drug raid in which he was seriously wounded, and his fellow officers did not call for help.
Oof.
There was never a formal investigation, and many think that it was an attempt by his colleagues to get him killed. Serpico retired from the NYPD and suffered pain and deafness from the shooting.
Oh, God.
He prefers being called a lamplighter instead of a whistleblower because it evokes memories of the historic ride in which Paul Revere made lots of noise and caused these lanterns to be lit to wake everybody up.
Yeah.
Which I kind of love that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds way more badass. It sounds like he's in a Dungeons and Dragons campaign. I am the lamplighter. I would accept a quest from that guy.
Well,
Let's fucking go.
Cherry on top for your quest.
For my quest.
Right. In 1973, a movie was released called Serpico about him, and he is played by Al Pacino.
I feel like I knew that because I recognize the name because it's a very famous name, but I also feel like I recognize it from
I recognize the name,
movie.
but I didn't really know the story behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the lamplighting thing.
Yeah.
Here's one that you'll definitely recognize. Edward Snowden. In 2013, Snowden, a former computer intelligence consultant, released documents on top secret National Security Agency programs, so NSA programs, to reporters at The Guardian and The Washington Post. Have you seen the movie Snowden?
I haven't.
It's really good.
That is what I've heard. I've heard it's quite well done.
I might write that down and put it as a rewatch. I'm going to watch Snowden and Dick this weekend.
I love that.
That's going to be my Mother's
please.
Day.
Yes, love this.
Lay in bed and eat bonbons and
Yes, watch Dick.
watch Dick. I'm going to watch Dick this Mother's Day.
Gotta watch Dick.
Okay. So Snowden was charged with violating the Espionage Act, but sought asylum in Russia before he was apprehended. In September of 2020, a U.S. federal court ruled in United States versus Moelin. It might be his lawyer. I don't know.
Maybe.
That Snowden exposed illegal U.S. surveillance behavior. Snowden has been a citizen of Moscow for years. He's like still in he's just living there with his wife and their kid. However, he has a highly active Twitter account, X Twitter. Stop trying to make X
We're never
happen,
calling it X. It's not happening.
where he shares his views on domestic matters in the United States, and he is currently on the board of directors at the Freedom of the Press Foundation, which
I mean, there are a lot of people that think Snowden is a real fucking hero.
I think
And
he's a hero.
Yeah, I get it. He's
I mean, what
Put-
the
put a
NSA
lot-
was doing is really fucked up.
Not okay.
And I'm kind of shocked that out of all of the people who work for the NSA, he's the only fucking one who is like, hey, y'all, you don't even know
what's going down
what's going
here.
down.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the note of the Freedom of the Press Foundation, if you are curious about more freedom of the press issues and also like whistleblowers and like what like the details when it comes down to like anonymous sources and more of like the legal background, you can visit that group at freedom.press. They have a ton of resources and a ton of information, and also not fan picker, kind of fan inspiration. If you're listening, I did try to email you. It bounced back. That listener worked at the FPF. Okay, so my last whistleblower is Linda Tripp. So Linda Tripp is a
Fucking Linda Tripp.
I can just picture her. Linda is a former government worker who secretly recorded her phone conversations with White House intern Monica Lewinsky. She became a close friend, quote unquote, to Monica Lewinsky when they both worked in the public affairs office at the Pentagon. Tripp said she acted on the advice of a literary agent and began secretly recording conversations with Lewinsky. And in January of 1998, Tripp revealed the recordings to independent counsel Kenneth Starr, who led the Clinton Whitewater investigation. And she did this in exchange for immunity from prosecution for illegal wiretapping. Because you're not always allowed to just record private conversations with someone without telling them.
Check and make sure you're in a single party state before you do shit like that. Obviously, we've talked about this before, but in a lot of cases, especially trying to compile evidence in intimate partner abuse cases, like we get why there needs to be some kind of protection of single party recording. We're not trying to like take that away. It's just like
You just have to be careful.
Monica Lewinsky was fucking used, abused, made the butt of a joke, and then like cast aside, slut shamed, fat shamed,
all of it.
She took on so much more than her fucking fair share of bullshit as a means of distracting and victimizing her so that Bill didn't have to take responsibility for his bullshit and could run for re-election. Like, we all fucking know now, looking back, how torn apart in the press she was. And Linda Tripp fucking sold her out to
and pretended to be her friend.
Her own self-interest.
She was like
she pretended to be her friend.
20 fucking years old or something. She was so young.
Young. I mean, no, Linda Tripp is not a girl's girl.
No.
Okay? She is not a fucking girl's girl. She was looking out for number one. and she sold out Monica so that she could get a book deal. And was it worth it? Where is she now?
What's her book called? I don't remember.
Literally no one gives a fuck about like you latching on to a story that had nothing to do with you because you want to feel important. And I get it. It's always been hard for women in politics and in corporations. I understand, but don't turn on each other.
Yeah.
I apparently have a lot of feelings about Monica Lewinsky.
And Linda Tripp.
Fuck Linda Trump.
Yeah. Remember when like Hulu was pumping out these like biopic mini like limited series?
It's really good. The one about Monica Lewinsky is really fucking good. Really good.
Yeah.
Really good. Really good
So
stuff.
I didn't have any psych except for our own psychoses, but that is
was
my
phenomenal.
section. A little bit of background about blowing the whist.
Blow the man down.
Some examples. I'm really looking forward to seeing if there is any accountability from Boeing. See if anything comes of that. See if there's any more deaths.
Yeah, I don't want there to be.
I don't want there to be either, but if there are,
yeah, we're watching.
The
world is fucking watching.
Yeah. Okay.
And now I need to like reevaluate every trip I have scheduled for the summer.
TRIPP.
Should we do that
every
while
Linda
we're on
trip?
break? Every Linda trip.
Yes, I would love to become ever more paranoid as each minute passes while we do our jobs.
Yep. Then let's take a moment to hear a word from our sponsors while we spiral out of control off mic for a minute. Are you ready for my case? Do you have your snack?
Okay, so Amanda, before you get started on your case, I do want to briefly discuss the fact that, I don't want to discuss the fact that, but like, I just finished the Stormy Daniels documentary on Peacock.
Yeah.
Speaking about whistleblowers, that bitch has gotten, I didn't realize how much of the short end of the fucking legal stick she's gotten through this entire thing.
Yeah.
Oh, that is a tough mother.
I need to watch that documentary because obviously we've been following this story for a while since the infamous like Mario mushroom cap tweet. Haven't looked back, but I do. Is that on Hulu?
It's on Peacock.
Peacock. I've heard it's pretty damn good.
It's really good and it's super timely because as we record this,
she's testifying.
She just gave her. I don't know that she testified today. She at least testified yesterday. But yeah, she's testifying in the trial that has to do with her hush money because, of course, he has several pending federal trials coming up.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, as we say, not all, you don't have to be like perfect to be a victim.
Right.
There are plenty of things that like there is for the average person to dislike about her on paper. But when you look at her whole story start to finish and you see all the shit that men in particular, men in power have thrown at her, it's incredible that she's where she is.
Continuing to push forward on any of this.
It's amazing. So if you're curious to learn about whistleblowing in real time and like current events, A, the Boeing shit, and B, the Stormy Daniels stuff, which has a bit more of a clear narrative, at least as we sit here right now.
Right.
Highly recommend that. It's wild.
Yeah.
So that's all I wanted to say in the spirit of whistleblowing.
I mean, people put it on the fucking line to come forward about this shit. And this is definitely one of those stories.
And she, it comes out that has like, her marriage kind of falls apart. She's raising a daughter. And like that relationship is strained. She feels like, and then she's like trying to make money any way that she knows how. And she is like a career adult entertainer. So of course she goes on like a stripping tour. More power to her, but like then they send undercover cops to go arrest her for like misdemeanor groping or something. It's like, bitch, she's a stripper.
Yeah, constant harassment.
Ridiculous.
And victimization. Yeah, it's fucked
Anyway, highly recommend Stormy.
Yeah, all right. Well, that's on my list for sure.
Dick, Snowden, Stormy.
We have work to do tonight.
It's a lot of whistleblowing.
It's going to be a weird weekend.
It's going to be a weird weekend. Happy Mother's Day.
It's going to be a very political Mother's Day.
And I'm going to the Renaissance Festival on Saturday.
Oh, that's fucking right. Oh my God. Your life is so weird. Please send me pictures of June at Renfest in a little bonnet.
We have her little Irish potato farmer outfit for her.
Thank God.
Comes with like little leggings with like little frill. She just looks like a little flute player.
Oh,
she's so cute.
I can't.
Okay, I want to hear what you're going to talk about.
Okay. Well, this is the story of a badass.
Okay.
And we have to go into the way, way back machine to tell it. So just buckle up. Silas Soule, who lived to the ripe age of 26, is the topic of our case today.
A lot of whistles to blow in 26 short years.
He blew hard.
Maybe that's how he died.
And he was so hot. There's a picture of him on the drive. I'm like, you're blowing just right and you're hot as shit. All right, Silas Soule.
Oh.
Let's fucking go. Yeah.
Okay, eyebrows.
I'm going to begin with a glimpse into who he was from a former letter he wrote to his little sister in the 1860s.
Why is he so foxy even though he doesn't have eyebrows?
No, he's so hot. I can't. And I think he might be blonde, but it's hard to tell in those old school photos.
Let's go with ginger. I'll accept the no eyebrows. He kind of looks like Prince Harry.
But when Prince Harry was even cuter.
Right.
He's a fox. He's got great bone structure.
Like 23-year-old Prince Harry.
Yeah. Teen bop Prince Harry.
Yeah. Does that sound pervy? I don't think so. 23.
We were into Prince Harry when we were like 11.
I know,
so
but I'm
allowed
36
to look back
now.
Right, but we're allowed to look back and be like, yeah, the Prince Harry we had crushes on when we were 11,
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of what this guy looks like.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're saying. We're not being like predators. Oh my God, calm down. Okay. So this is an excerpt from a letter he wrote to his little sister in the 1860s while he was serving in the army.
Is he American? Sorry.
Yes, he's American. Well, yes. Early, yeah, okay. You and mother write for me to be a Christian and not to be too wild, etc. But the army don't improve a fella much in that respect. And you know I never was much of a Christian and am naturally wild. But I have seen so much of the world and are not much changed.
These were my emails home from college.
Yes. I think there is not much danger of my spoiling. Our colonel is a Methodist preacher, and whenever he sees me drinking, gambling, stealing, or murdering, he says he will write to mother or my sister Annie, so I have to go straight.
Whatever he sees me murdering.
Well, we'll get to it. I don't think he was actually doing much murdering, but it's like training to kill in the army.
Well, that is military service.
Yeah. So we're going to back up. Silas was born into a family of abolitionists, like slavery abolitionists, in Bath, Maine. And they were inspired to join the abolitionists, like revolution movement after reading Uncle Tom's Cabin. So Silas and his family are white, and they participated in freeing enslaved people during this time.
Okay.
So he was raised in Maine and Massachusetts and was described as a, quote, friendly, intelligent, and good-natured young man, full of practical jokes and tall tales. Just a little sweet Pete. The family settled near what is now modern-day Lawrence, Kansas in the summer of 1855. And shortly after settling there, Silas's father, Amasa, established his household as a stop on the Underground Railroad.
Cool.
So at 17 years old, Silas would escort escaped enslaved Africans from Missouri and help them flee north to freedom when he was 17.
Wow. Was Missouri
with his family?
Was Missouri south? Missouri was north of the Mason-Dixon line, but not Kansas.
Girl, that's not a question to ask me. I don't know where it is now.
Well, it doesn't exist now.
Exactly.
Oh, Missouri was south. Missouri was Confederate.
So yeah, that's what I mean. He would escort escaped enslaved Africans from Missouri. They escaped plantations in Missouri. Yes, but would help them, and his family was a stop on the Underground Railroad. But he wasn't always in his home assisting. He he also did like missions of infiltration, essentially.
Got
or like
it.
helping
Okay.
people at the border.
Okay.
So he participated in that with his family. Silas's sister Anne, formerly Anne Soule, but now after she got married, Anne Prentice, told of her family's early experience in Maine, Massachusetts, and Kansas in a 1929 interview. And I just want to remind folks that what I'm about to read is a quote, and so there is some outdated language used here. This was the language of the time. She said, quote, "Our house was on the Underground Railway. John Brown, who we'll get back to, was often there, and he was a prominent figure in the abolitionist movement as well. My brother Silas and Brown were close friends. Silas went out on many a foray with him. I recall well when Brown came to our cabin one night with 13 slaves, men, women, and children. He had run them away from Missouri. Brown left them with us, and father would always take in all of the Negroes he could. Silas took the whole 13 from our home 8 miles to Mr. Grover's stone barn." So the whole family was part of the abolitionist movement. It's like how these children were raised. During the late 1850s, pro-slavery forces from Missouri and abolitionist forces from Kansas were essentially engaged in open warfare. They were constantly fighting with each other. While it would eventually enter the Union as a free state, this period of time became known as, quote, Bleeding Kansas. Like people were at each other's throats. During this time, murder, mayhem, destruction, and psychological warfare just reigned in the region. The conflict being if Kansas would be admitted to the Union as quote, a slave state or not.
Oh.
So there was fighting over where the territory of Kansas's allegiances were lying. And it was pretty, I don't know exactly how split it was, but it was pretty split. And there were a lot of abolitionist activists and forces in this area that were fighting with their southern neighbors, essentially, their Confederate neighbors. So this decision of whether or not Kansas would be a state that legally allows slavery was to be decided by popular vote, and people on all sides of the issue were flooding the area in order to influence the outcome and drive off opponents. Does that sound familiar?
People from out of state would come in.
Yep.
Wow. Cool.
Yep.
That is
to harass people at the polls.
Mm-hmm.
It was during this time that Silas became an expert at hit and run tactics, and his name gained widespread recognition in Kansas. He was like kicking ass. Yep. So in July of 1859, 20 pro-slavery men had crossed into Kansas to look for escaped enslaved Africans. They located and ambushed an Underground Railroad party led by a man named Dr. John Doy, who was a physician in Lawrence who was escorting 13 enslaved Africans to Iowa. The Missouri men arrested Dr. Doy and took the escapees back to be sold again. Doy was tried and convicted of, quote, abducting slaves, freeing people, and sentenced to 5 years in a Missouri penitentiary. While awaiting transfer to the prison at the jailhouse, Soule and 9 other men decided they're going to free Dr. John Doy. They're going to break him out of jail.
Love.
So Soule hatched a plan and put it into action on July 23rd, 1859. While Doy gazed out a window, he saw people walking by. One guy who just looks like a working man, quote, scarcely gave me a glance. But that was sufficient to enable me to recognize a familiar face, said Doy. Then Doy saw another man he recognized, and then a third. It was in this moment it starts to click for him what's going down. At this point, Doy began to get his things in order, even sending for his shirts that Mrs. Brown, the jailer's wife, had laundered for him, stating that
there's a laundry service in the
laundry
jail.
service at this jail. And he said, well, the evenings are cold. I'm going to need all my shirts. Can I have all my shirts back? And she's like, sure, honey, here's all your shirts. Around dusk, Silas Soule came into Doy's cell accompanied by the jailer because Silas had sweet talked his way in saying he literally had a message for Dr. Doy. Just charmed this jailer to be like, yeah, all right. Okay, I'll let you talk to him for a minute.
I love this.
Yep. He told him that he had recently seen his wife and son and that they were well and that they had hoped to see him within 2 weeks. So he's giving him a timeline of when he's going to come back and bust him out. In addition to passing Doy the message, this was also a scouting mission, as Soule looked around a great deal and, quote, as he, Soule, stood with his back close to the grated door talking with the jailer, I, Doy, expecting something, saw a small slip of paper in the hand which he held behind him and took it. So he slipped him a note.
Oh my God, I love this.
Hilariously, while the jailer didn't notice this because his attention had allegedly been directed elsewhere, he was like too lost in Silas Soule's eyes. One of the other prisoners did notice. So when Soule and the jailer left, they started like harassing Doy to be like,
Let
what
us
the
all
fuck?
out.
What's going on? And so Doy agrees to read the note aloud and says, quote, be ready at midnight.
Oh, so they can all jump on it.
Well, the other prisoners didn't think that this would be a successful attempt, as it was like a pretty strong jail in the heart of a city of 11,000 people. So even if they broke out of jail, once the alarm was sound, a lot of people were going to come try to apprehend them. So they were like,
try. What do you have to lose?
Well, it depends on what they're in for.
That's true.
They might have a lot to lose.
If they're in for like a week,
Yeah.
just wait it out.
Right. But John Doy is confident. He's like, no. I know this guy. Like, this is his jam.
This is my buddy.
He gets people out of places they are imprisoned. Okay. That's his whole thing.
Have you seen his lack of eyebrows?
Yeah. When asked why he was so confident, he said, quote, the men I've seen in the street today who have stood with me shoulder to shoulder in Kansas fighting the battle of freedom and have never flinched. They will do the thing or die.
Oh,
They're
the thing
hardcore.
or die.
Yeah. I like
Damn.
that. I know. I kind of want that on a hat.
I love it.
2 of the men pretended to be, okay, so this is like how all these dudes get into the prison to help him get out. 2 of the men pretend to be bounty hunters who had caught a horse thief who was also part of their crew. So there's 3 dudes now.
And this is like 2 weeks later or whatever.
But yeah, within like a week or so.
Okay.
2 helpers that are pretending to be bounty hunters and 1 horse thief who's not an actual horse thief. He's pretending to be a bounty hunter. Or he's pretending to be a horse thief. I'm fine. I'm high.
That the bounty hunters captured and are
Correct.
taking the horse thief into the prison.
Yep, but all 3 of them are in on it. It's just how they're getting into the prison.
Oh my God, I love this Trojan horse thief.
Exactly. When they talked their way in by stating that they wanted to jail the horse thief overnight, as soon as the jail's door opened, they drew their weapons, stated that they were there to rescue Dr. Doy or die trying,
Rescue.
and demanded that the jailer take them to Dr. Doy.
Oh my God, I love all of this.
It's quite adorable. As described by one contemporary paper, men, quote, played on the honest credulity of a sleepy jailer and gained admittance within that iron door. Once entered, the mask was dropped. Like, cops have always been so fucking deeply unserious, you guys. It's always been... It's
the
always
sleepy
been,
jailer.
Yes, it's always been like this. Once entered, the mask was dropped. In place of the soothing accents of persuasive words, was heard the threatening click of the ready weapon, and clamor's tongues demanded Doy should accompany them from the jail. They also told the jailer that they would kill him if he attempted to escape or raise an alarm, but if he complied, they wouldn't touch him. He'd be totally fine.
Okay.
So the jailer complied on the stipulation that Doy not be forced to leave. He has to give consent to leave.
I admire that.
Well, yeah, I guess this was like a thing. We'll get to it. So
that they like capture prisoners from like other sides, I guess.
yeah, I don't know.
It's like as long as you want to leave.
Exactly. When they got to the cell, they put it to Doy as a point of honor as whether to escape, and offered that Doy should stay in the hopes of being granted a new trial and to be honorably acquitted. Be like, don't add these charges, man. You might get a new trial, which sounds wild, but later events did show that Doy staying on his honor was a pretty valid possibility, because part of the reason why he was being rescued from this prison in Missouri anyway was that he was not a resident of Missouri, and the laws under which he was detained for only applied in Missouri and didn't apply to where he's from. And so they were
kind of
basically
flimsy anyway.
Yeah, they were basically trying to argue that like you can't really charge him with this shit when, you know, or like he could have been transferred somewhere else. Exactly. So I don't know. There were like holes in how long he would have been staying there regardless.
Also, I would think that like if they didn't give him that choice, like, are you leaving voluntarily? Then it could be argued later in court that he was abducted by these people and that it was no fault of his. He was taken.
Yep. But Doy stated that he would rather go with his friends as he didn't trust any Missouri court. And this distrust appeared to be valid as he later confirmed that his appeal papers never even reached the Missouri Supreme Court. He'd already filed them. They never even made it.
Got it.
Doy then shook hands with the jailers, stating, "Boys, Mr. Brown and his family have treated me like a gentleman. He has been very kind to me." As to be expected, the other prisoners appealed to be released as well, because they were like, wait, this worked?
Wait a minute.
What about us?
Yeah.
But the crew declined, waving them back with their pistols and stating that, quote, "If you have violated the laws of Missouri, you must suffer the penalty. We did not come to interfere with justice, but to set right that which we knew to be wrong." So Doy...
They were being quite fair, judicious.
Yep, and Doy was in Kansas when men from Missouri crossed the state line to arrest him for freeing enslaved Africans in Missouri. But he was in Kansas at the time of his arrest. They didn't catch him in Missouri. And so it's reasonable to believe...
It was unlawful in the first place.
Right, and is the reason behind them going to orchestrate this escape, that these men believed in the legal system and in breaking their friend out of jail, because as Free State sympathizers would believe Doy to be completely innocent because he was arrested in Kansas. And so those Missouri laws don't apply.
Obsessed.
Yeah. So like at the time, it was actually reasonable for them to be like, you sure you don't want to stay and just ride this out and not have these charges against you for escaping? Because like this could all go away. But it obviously didn't fucking go away because those papers never fucking made it. Anyway, when they happened by another person outside who was a traveler just seeking refuge, the rescuers told him, "Mr. Stayback." So it's like, you stay here, but they literally just called him Mr. Stayback.
It's like a gopher.
"Yes, you will please to understand and to inform the citizens of St. Joseph that we came in force from Kansas to rescue Dr. Doy. We surprised and overpowered the jailer and he should not suffer in consequence, for it would have taken a much bigger man than he to resist us."
Oh, whoa.
So they sent
it's a bit
someone to be
underhanded.
like, yeah, but they were like, okay, we're going to send you to deliver this message so that like that sleepy jailer doesn't get in too much trouble because we stole that guy.
That was nice of him.
Doy had to be carried out by some men due to being ill and barely able to walk due to exhaustion and disease.
Ooh.
It was a rough time to be a human.
And in jail.
Yeah. The group then left.
In Missouri.
Yep, exactly. Group then left telling the jailer, Mr. Brown, that they would guard the house for a little while. Like the jailer and his wife literally lived there. It was like a prison connected, you know, they were living quarters. I think that was pretty
common up until like the mid 20th century.
It was, because communities were just a lot smaller. So they were like, don't try to leave. We've got people watching this place. We will shoot you. So this gives them a head start. And even though no one was watching the house, Mr. Brown and his wife were like, okay, cool, and didn't tell anyone till the next morning.
Everyone's like really chill about most of
this. People are really keeping level heads. Tracks led to the riverside, and the group stole skiffs from their moorings, like these little boats, and escaped. And they moored the skiffs that they stole on the other side, hoping that they'd taken all of them and put them across the river, and like people could get them back later, but then that would give them even more time if they're being pursued.
They're stuck.
Yep. So eventually, tracks on the other side of the river led their pursuers to Elwood, but the search there was abandoned as useless, and the sheriff offered a reward of $1,000 for Doy's arrest.
Doy.
So this kind of became, people were like, oh, that fucking worked?
So it became like a blueprint for doing the same thing?
A little bit. So in late 1859, due to his success with the John Doy escape, Soule was then asked to assist in the escape of a well-known abolitionist who we mentioned earlier, John Brown, from a Charleston jail in what is now West Virginia.
And John Brown is the famous John Brown?
I believe so.
Who had like the song about him, like, John Brown is rotten in the grave or whatever.
I don't
molten
know
in the grave.
about that, but like John Brown, prominent leader in the American abolitionist movement in the decades preceding the Civil War. National promise in the 1850s for radical abolitionism and fighting in Bleeding, Kansas. He was captured, tried, and executed by the Commonwealth of Virginia for a raid.
Like people like celebrated his death because he was an abolitionist, but then it became like a catchy tune, and now
I hadn't heard that, but I believe you. Ugh.
I think we talked about it in a drunk dive once a long time ago.
Maybe. I don't know.
I remember singing to you guys, John Brown's a moldering in the grave. And that's like a line from the song, but.
Yuck. Well, it is that John Brown.
Okay, great. Just making sure, because it's John Brown.
Yeah. So things went well with Soule and his dudes getting John Doe. So people were like, hey, go get John Brown. Like, we need John Brown. So John Brown, however, was like a devoutly religious person, and he believed it was because of his religion, it was his duty to end slavery, and that outweighed the law of the land. Like basically the way he practices his religion does not allow for the justification of slavery, and that's more important to him than the law. So he's like, I don't care if slavery is law. Yeah, it's like, I don't care if slavery is legal. God says it's bad. We're not fucking doing that. And he considered violence against the pro-slavery faction, including ambush and murder of supporters of slavery, as like part of his moral obligation to end slavery. And
that must have been, I mean, I don't know for sure, but like as a religious man, is what it sounds like he is.
I'm sure it could be hard
that must have been really hard to rationalize. Maybe not really hard, but somewhat difficult.
I think that basically every movement of liberation has involved some violence, because their movements of liberation are typically started by oppressed people who have been the victims of violence for so long. And, peace often doesn't send the same message, if any message at all. And so I think that's just something that's important to remember when there's so much discourse about how people protest and how people treat property when they're protesting. And, all of so many things that are going on in the world today are repeats of history and have lots of threads that connect them together. And that's just how liberation is. Every fucking struggle is connected in some way, shape, or form.
Totally.
So I just thought this was interesting because it feels kind of topical right now. And this has been an approach that has driven forward serious progress for a very fucking long time, applied to a lot of different realms of oppression. So he basically was like, it's our moral obligation to end slavery by any fucking means necessary. And Amasa Soule, Silas's dad, who like established their house as a spot on the Underground Railroad, agreed. And so Silas was one of John Brown's allies and rode with him and his sons in many of their raids against pro-slavery settlements along the Kansas-Missouri border. Because remember, people who want to basically flip Kansas into quote unquote a slave state, there's so much infighting happening there right now. So they're just like constantly at fucking war, abolitionists against folks who want to keep slavery. Brown had been in prison there after his ill-advised attack on the federal arsenal at Harper's Ferry, which was part of an effort to arm what is referred to as, quote, a slave rebellion. Brown was captured in a battle that killed or wounded most of his men. He was tried and found guilty of the crimes of treason, murder, and conspiring with enslaved Africans to rebel. So the way it's discussed in history books is like, John Brown, people were really pissed at John Brown because he, quote unquote, incited a slave riot and tried to take people's property because people owned people.
Yeah.
And for that egregious fucking act, he was sentenced to death by hanging. So his rescue was urgent and important to people all over, the country who were part of the abolitionist movement, because John Brown had been such a prominent leader in that movement. So November of 1859, Initially, the plan was for Silas to get himself arrested, but he never got a chance because when Silas did that kind of recon mission where he just like visited John Brown, he charms his way into the prison and is like, I have a message for John Brown, and gets to hold an audience with him. He tells him in, covert terms, like, we're going to get you out. We're working on this. And John Brown actually sent him a message to Silas after that visit saying, don't free me. I think that it would
dangerous.
Be, well, not that it's necessarily, partly that it's too dangerous because we need abolitionists safe, like, in this fight, but because he essentially wanted to martyr himself because he thought that that would spread more like awareness and information about this movement, and that would like appeal to more people to join the abolitionist movement. So he turned down rescue, and Silas honored his choice, and John Brown stayed to face his execution.
Jesus.
Yep. The next attempt occurred when Silas helped attempt to free 2 of John Brown's followers who had also been imprisoned. They essentially put into action the same plan. Silas goes to talk to them. Silas pretends to get arrested. So he's actually out in the streets. He doesn't pretend. He gets arrested, but pretends to be fucked up. So he's out pretending to be drunk. He just wants to be thrown in jail for the night for like a drunken disorderly, like nothing crazy. He just wants to get in.
What a fun mission.
I know, right? So he's yelling and tripping in the streets. He's brawling until he's thrown into jail overnight for public drunkenness. As a detail, he specifically pretended to be a drunken Irish laborer, and the jury's kind of out on, the jury's kind of out on whether he thought that this ruse would be more like easy because of the stereotypes, like the cops would want to shut down his bullshit fast and throw him in jail. And that's his goal. He wants to get put away.
Or
if he was actually trying to hide his identity. But like their whole movement, I mean, there's a reason why the Irish are like so deeply connected to so many social justice movements. They've had to fight for their own liberation more than once. But the abolitionist like militia group was called the Jayhawkers. And this was an elite militia group that Silas was part of that raided towns in like pro-slavery states. They also aided the escape of enslaved Africans and freed imprisoned Underground Railroad conductors. So like this was named after a mythical Irish bird, the jayhawk. So there was like some inspiration at least, or possibly solidarity in the naming of that militia group.
There's some sport team called the Jayhawks.
Probably.
I think in Kansas or Missouri.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'll Google it.
So the Jayhawkers of the 1850s, led by Colonel James Montgomery, were both regarded as honorable abolitionists or renegade thieves, depending on which side of the racial firestorm of slavery you resided at the time.
It's the University of Kansas Athletics is called the Kansas Jayhawks.
That makes sense because the Jayhawkers, I mean, Silas was in Kansas and he was part of the Jayhawkers.
Cool. I never knew.
So that might be a nod to this militia group. Who knows? That'd be cool if it really was.
Let's go with it.
So Silas, who greatly admired the Irish spirit. So that's why it's like some people really don't think he was just trying to like be quote unquote racist.
Yeah, like a stereotypical drunken Irish dude.
Yeah, it's like we're in solidarity with the Irish, and these cops fucking hate the Irish. It's like check both boxes at once. It's gonna get me into the prison faster, so I can break these motherfuckers out. So Silas, who greatly admired the Irish, would often put on an Irish brogue to amuse his friends. So at least he had like some practice at it. Ethnically, he was Dutch. LOL. Same girl. So as before, Silas, posing as a drunk Irish laborer, managed to walk his way to the 2 additional men who had been working with John Brown, who were held prisoner inside the jail. Quote, having apparently become somewhat restored to sobriety, his songs and good humor won the kind consideration of the confidence of Captain Avis, the jailer, who allowed him the freedom of the corridors and did not subject him to the rigorous confinement of a cell.
Yeah, you can walk around the
It
hall.
pays to be charming, I guess. I would absolutely know. But anyway.
You would know.
Unfortunately, as their leader did, the two followers rejected his offered rescue, saying that they would follow in John Brown's footsteps and be executed as well, becoming martyrs for the cause of abolition.
Oh, God.
So they were all killed.
Man.
After returning to Lawrence, after this escape attempt, not only was Soule disillusioned at how people would prefer to die than stay and continue to fight for liberation, he also received word that the Jayhawkers were being hunted down one by one, so he should not come back to Kansas. Like, it's too hot here and we need you to stay alive. So he spends a year in Boston, which is where he had lived as a child. Then Soule decides to join his friends and his brother, who had traveled to what is now Colorado as part of the gold rush, although his brother was specifically mining quartz, but that's like what had brought him out there. So he can't go home to Kansas. He goes to Boston. He's lonely. He's like, my brother and friends are in Colorado. I'm going to go there. So in 1861, he worked in that area, like I think what we know now is Denver, until the onset of the Civil War, and he joined the 1st Colorado Volunteers. So he was like part of the army in Colorado. Although Colorado was not yet a state, most Coloradoans sympathized with the Union and created a pro-Union volunteer army called the Colorado 1st Regiment. Silas was among the first to enlist, and he helped recruit fellow miners to Company K. At only 22 years old, he still had more military experience than most of his regiment because he was raised. He's 22.
Oh my God.
He's helped with like 2 succeeded, but not because, or 2 failed, but not because he didn't do his job, but 3 prison breaks. He's worked. He's been part of the Jayhawkers abolitionist militia. He's in the Underground Railroad. He's like raiding plantations. Like he had a lot of experience. Yeah, he was literally raised for this.
Wow.
So yeah, at only 22, he still had more military experience than most of his regiment and was awarded a commission as first lieutenant for his efforts.
God.
The regiment fought in the Battle of Glorieta Pass, in which the 1st Regiment successfully blocked the Confederate Army from moving into the West. The regiment was promoted to an official United States cavalry unit after this battle success.
Wow, that's a big deal because they never did get too far west.
Yeah.
Wow.
The men and their leader, Colonel John Chivington, we'll get to this fucking guy, were considered war heroes. Silas, in particular, stood out for his bravery. Used to fighting in the Bloody Kansas War since he was a teenager, his superiors noticed that Silas was as calm during the Battle of Glorieta Pass as, quote, if he were at a parade.
Oh.
Which is like terrifying. But it's like, he grew up at war. So he's used to it. Chivington promoted Silas to captain and placed him in charge of Fort Lyon with Major Edward Wynkoop, one of the founders of Denver. So now it's 1864. He's the captain of the 1st Colorado Cavalry. And they are about to have a meeting with Chief Blackkettle and a group of peace chiefs in Denver City to like have a meeting of the minds, obviously American settlers in quote unquote government, and then indigenous populations, and what we're going to do with this land.
What did it have to do with abolition, or was it about territory?
I think it's a both and situation, because obviously a lot was in flux during this time, and the country and states were still like expanding and establishing themselves.
So maybe it was like, if you help us fight on our side, we'll...
Some of that. There was definitely some of that going on. It's just such a weird time because, I mean, this is why so many people are like, this war was about states' rights, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, sure, because so many states were trying to confirm their borders and establish themselves and then know if their laws were going to allow for slavery. Like that was...
It all boiled down to owning other humans.
Quite
That's
literally.
It.
Yep.
There's no other debate.
That's happening at the same time that we're still murdering and taking and claiming to quote unquote negotiate land ownership between these states that are establishing themselves officially and the indigenous populations in the area. So it's like a really fucking horrific, just shitstorm of violence and colonization and racism all happening all at once. So I'm not sure the exact specifics of this meeting that they were having, but it's just important to know that they were having it. Okay. So they bring Chief Black Kettle and a group of peace chiefs to Denver City to meet with the governor and military leaders in an attempt to negotiate peace with Black Kettle's group. I believe that they were trying to defend their land, and so that there was fighting. Now they're trying to, quote unquote, negotiate peace, which probably really means negotiating borders and like where we're going to leave you alone over here. You leave us alone over here, kind of a conversation. It wouldn't go great. And
you don't say.
Yeah, it led to, well, no, it would go fucking horrifically because it led to a horrific massacre of indigenous people. Oh. So, November 29th, 1864, the Sand Creek Massacre occurs. And this would be one of the largest massacres in U.S. history. Oh. Edward Wynkoop, we mentioned him earlier, served in the 1st Colorado Volunteer Cavalry as a major and was a, quote, Indian agent, meaning he was authorized to interact with Native American tribes on behalf of the government, and was one of the founders of Colorado. I think he was also a translator. Soule accompanied Wynkoop on this infamous September 1864 journey into Kansas Indian country, these are their terms, where they rescued 4 white children hostages of the Cheyenne dog soldiers and secured an unofficial peace accord with the Cheyenne principal chief Black Kettle and what later became known as the Smoky Hill Council. So like this part, we figured out. They worked it out between them.
Okay.
Silas also accompanied Wynkoop to Denver, or Wynkoop, I'm not sure if some people in Colorado are screaming at me right now. After that council, with Black Kettle and the dog soldier chief Bull Bear and several other Cheyenne and Arapaho leaders to meet with Governor John Evans to like continue these conversations and figure this out so that hopefully some of the violence can end. As we know, it fucking doesn't. The Camp Weld Council was the second pivotal meeting between indigenous and government leaders that would figure prominently in events to come that fall. So at Camp Weld, Governor Evans ordered Black Kettle to comply with the military authority at Fort Lyon, and for any quote-unquote Indian that did not want to go to war with the army to surrender to Wynkoop. Black Kettle and other leaders of the council agreed to this, and they returned to Fort Lyon with Wynkoop and Soule, where an agreement was reached to allow the peaceably, like these peaceful folks who literally said, yes, we agree to your terms. We don't want any bloodshed. These were Cheyenne and Arapaho people just camping at a spot on the Big Sandy River under the American flag and the white flag of surrender as they're making their way back toward their land and trying to show in that process that like, we are not a threat.
We're not fucking with you.
Don't fucking
just trying
attack
to go
us.
home.
Yep. So this was used to designate military protection to any passing Union troops, because remember, that shit's fucking happening concurrently.
Oh, right. The Civil War.
Right. So what followed was a massacre on indigenous people that had already surrendered to Wynkoop under the terms of the Camp Weld Council. The Cheyenne and Arapaho left the Camp Weld Council believing that they had made peace and were under the protection of the United States fucking government. Silas Soule and Edward Wynkoop thought that peace had been made as well. Okay? Wynkoop leaves because he's like, I've done my due diligence and I've got other shit to do. Silas
thought things were
He thinks
fine.
things are good. We've, you stay here with the other men that are backing you up. Keep an eye on this situation before they basically settle back in their own land. And Silas is like, tight, I'll stick around. November 28th, 1864, that motherfucker, Colonel Chivington, who was apparently on a self-appointed mission to seek out and attack Native Americans, gathered his troops, telling them...
George Zimmerman of the Civil War.
Worse. But yeah, I mean, pretty similar. It's like, it's some fucking like...
Neighborhood patrol.
It's a fucking Kyle Rittenhouse bullshit. Like... Mommy, drop me off here with my fun gun so I can fucking shoot innocent people.
My fun gun.
Because I want to feel like a big boy. It feels like that kind of fucking shit, but just obviously much more hellish because of the scale. So he lies to his troops saying, oh, at the Sand Creek, it's a massacre. Like the indigenous people are violent and we need to go there. Like we're facing a hostile attack. We have to go down there and fucking restore order in this area.
Oh, no.
Now remember, Wynkoop had left for Fort Riley to handle, I guess, a release of additional Native American prisoners. So Silas had stayed behind to represent the soldiers of Fort Lyon in Wynkoop's place and keep an eye on the indigenous people that were there, like make sure they're safe, protect them. Silas soon realized that Chivington did not have any information at all about an attack. Instead, he was just planning to raid the peaceful Cheyenne and Arapaho village in Sand Creek, where the wives, children, and elderly of the tribes were living while like warriors and fighters for them had been at the Camp Weld Council and were like not there. So they don't even have like their own warriors protecting them. These are just like old folks and women and children.
And they called these people like savages.
Yeah, and said that,
like that
they were under attack. Chivington was like, yeah, they're attacking them. They're attacking our men down there. We have to go.
Oh.
And Silas was like, the fuck they are. That's literally not happening. You're making that shit up. Silas violently opposed Chivington's plan to raid the village. No one was armed at Sand Creek, he argued, and Chivington was a coward and a murderer if he went through with his attack. He was saying this to like everybody and to him. He's like, don't fucking come here. Colonel Chivington threatened to hang Silas and take control of his men because he does outrank him. But Silas continued to argue against any attack in Sand Creek. As he put it, he went to where a number of officers had gathered and, quote, told them that any man who would take part in the murders, knowing the circumstances as we did, was a low-lived, cowardly son of a bitch. So he's getting to his own men in that area and being like, listen, this fucking asshole is coming down here saying this shit. And if you join that fucking asshole and don't stand with me to protect these people who...
Then you're just as bad.
Then you're also a fucking asshole and you can just go fuck yourself.
Wow.
So on the day of the massacre, Soule refused to order his men to fire on any of the defenseless people, even after Chivington came in and was like, no, you have to do this. They wouldn't fire on the peaceful indigenous settlement, primarily, like I said, made up of old men, women, and young children. And he went as far as to order his men to take up an armed position between these indigenous people and Chivington's attacking troops, allowing more of the Native Americans that were there to escape the massacre. So many more people would have died. He literally put his and his men's bodies in the way. Like, that's what fucking...
God.
Allyship looks like.
Yeah.
To make sure that people could get out of there. And he warned them that they were coming.
Damn.
As he put it, quote, I refused to fire and swore that none but a coward would. For by this time, hundreds of women and children were coming towards us and getting on their knees for mercy.
Oh.
Anthony shouted, kill the sons of bitches. I heard an officer say that Old Smith, who was an interpreter, and anyone who sympathized with the Indians, again, not my words, ought to be killed, and now was a good time to do it.
Oh my God.
So those are the orders he's hearing, and he's trying to hold down his own men. He said, by this time, there was no organization among our troops. They were a perfect mob, every man on his own hook. My company was the only one that kept their formation, and we didn't fire a shot.
Wow.
So they just stood there and protected the people as much as they could and wouldn't shoot at them the way that they were being ordered to.
Did any of those men die?
I believe so. But mostly the attack was on the indigenous people. Yeah. Wow. Despite threats against his life, Soule later testified to Congress stating that the tribe was under the understanding that they were to be protected by the troops until a messenger returned to give them further instructions. And a messenger never came. The only people who fucking came down there were the people that wanted to murder them. He also said that they were surprised when about the same time that Major Wynkoop had left that area, they find that Colonel Chivington is arriving with about 1,000 men. It's like he knew that if Wynkoop had been there, he wouldn't have gotten away with this. And that he had specifically informed Chivington that the Native Americans in the area were not dangerous. So Wynkoop even like backed Silas up and was like, no, I told that motherfucker that these people aren't armed. So I don't know where the fuck he's coming from saying that there was some violent attack that he needed to go take up arms against them.
He just wanted to kill a bunch of innocent, unarmed people.
Yep. He also testified that there were no demands made upon the tribe before the attack, such as surrendering. And that even though they were under a white flag already, and that they were trying...
And the American flag.
Yeah.
That's...
And that throughout this encounter, they were trying to further surrender, which, like, I don't know how much more you can surrender than they're not fighting. They're already under a white flag. What is there to surrender to? Yeah. They're not doing anything.
And they have the word of, like, several people who are, quote unquote, in charge, like authorities in charge of this situation.
Yep, it didn't matter. It didn't matter because those individuals were outnumbered, and Chivington knew it.
God damn.
He also testified that women and children were included in the slaughter and that there was no effort among the commanding officers to prevent the mutilations that were described in a letter that he wrote. Their property was also taken by the soldiers, these Native American people's property, their horses, their clothing, basically anything of value. They also took souvenirs.
Oh, I don't even want to know what that means.
Yeah. Silas blew the lid off of Chivington's entire...
biological souvenirs?
Sometimes. Ugh. Yeah. He blew the lid off of Chivington's entire operation and wouldn't let him keep spinning a narrative of defensive action. Soule's letters to family friend Walt Whitman, never heard of him, and Major Wynkoop.
Family friend.
Walt
this
Whitman.
Dude's family.
I know. Were among the primary reasons the Battle of Sand Creek was even investigated. Like, they believed Silas and put pressure on the government to be like, something's off here. We got to look into this.
This reminds me of the My Lai massacre or My Lai massacre.
Yeah.
Or My Lai massacre. I always pronounce it wrong. The one in Vietnam where they just indiscriminately slaughtered an entire village of mostly women and children.
So Silas's testimony in early 1865 was part of the military and U.S. Congress investigation of the Battle of Sand Creek, which was listed among the reasons that the, quote, battle was reclassified as a massacre, because it's not a battle when one side has barely anything.
Armed.
Yeah. Oh. And you're just surrounded and killed.
It's just a conflict.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And, it's worth noting that, like, without Silas Soule's testimony, this would have been whitewashed out of history and would be in history books as nothing more than another battle in a war with violent Native American people. Chivington did this and then was spinning a narrative to just not have anyone even bat an eye, And so obviously if this happened here, it's certain that this happened in many, many, many battles in American history. Mm-hmm. And it's just a reminder that, like, people have been risking their lives and livelihoods to bear witness and share the truth of atrocities committed by the state for a long time. And, like, it's a reminder in the current times of how important that role can be to make sure that history remembers real stories. So, like, however we can share them and amplify them does make a difference. Because if we know the truth, then you can't just rewrite it and package it a different way.
And it's like a mechanism of checks and balances. Like,
right.
Whistleblowing and all this other stuff is just as important to democratic ideals as any codified law.
Absolutely. So in this massacre, 150 unarmed Cheyenne and Arapaho women and children and elders were killed.
Oh, Jesus.
Quote, Chivington reported 500 or 600 killed, but there were not more than 200 people even there.
Okay, so he's just exaggerating his
numbers.
Carnage.
Yep.
Oh my God.
In the narrative he was spinning about how this, like, little regiment stood up and drove out these violent people.
I thought you were going to say 5 or 6 casualties because it wasn't that big of a deal.
Mm-mm. No, it was all the way on the other end. He wanted to create, like, a war hero's tale.
I hope that guy is burning in hell right now.
Yeah, I hope so too. So there's a letter that Silas Soule wrote and read to Congress about the atrocities committed there. I'm not going to read it because
I don't know that I can compartmentalize that well right now.
I mean, I'm not going to read it, not necessarily for the benefit of our mental health, though that's certainly part of it, but it's very traumatizing, and I don't want to further traumatize with talking about this explicit violence like any of our Indigenous listeners. It's just not necessary, so I'm not going to fucking do it. But the testimony described the events, included horrific violence against the Indigenous victims. Like I said, I will not be reading all of those details for just collective mental health among our listeners and ourselves. But there was mutilation, stealing of jewelry by any means necessary. You know, we know that women and children were killed. Some of these people were pregnant. It was just more dehumanizing and indiscriminate violence against innocent families, and history just continues to repeat itself. In the aftermath of the Sand Creek Massacre, Captain Soule's steadfast refusal to order his company to open fire allowed many, perhaps hundreds, of innocent Cheyenne and Arapaho people to flee this area through his company's line. So, like, I don't think that they were necessarily face to face with all the other soldiers, but the way I kind of picture it, and I'd have to look deeper, obviously we're under less time for me to like look into every single aspect of this. But from what I've kind of pieced together, what I understand is that these troops came down and kind of surrounded this camp, and they're all ordered to fire. And in like the horseshoe that Silas's men are in, they're refusing to fire. And so they have an opening in this circle, essentially, that they're like letting Indigenous people out of. And that's why I don't have numbers at my fingertips of like members of Silas's little company from Colorado, how many of them may have been harmed. It could have been none, because it was like, as he said, so chaotic, and there's just surrounded, and the only ones who are paying any fucking attention are like my guys, who I was like, we're not firing on these people. Let them go.
Yeah.
And then everyone else is in their own like fucking cowboy fantasy, killing all these people.
They just saw white guys and Indigenous people, and they just went, yeah.
And that's what they were fucking down there for. So they just did their thing. I don't think that they were really fighting against these guys that were letting them go.
Though they probably weren't paying. It's not like they had like fucking earpieces to know what was going on.
No. So the Sand Creek Massacre, because of Chivington being a lying piece of shit, was first called a battle and hailed as a great victory, saying that they had taken out 500 to 600 of their enemy soldiers. And after the massacre, Colonel Chivington wrote a letter to his superiors in Washington, D.C., telling them the Colorado cavalry had bravely fought against, quote, hostile Indians and earned a great victory for the United States. Like, them among all of these people fought alongside us. So don't listen to his testimony if he makes any.
Oh, God.
This was a great victory. In his letter, Chivington mentioned that he would be keeping close watch on a troublesome captain named Silas Soule, who had proved himself, quote, a greater friend to the Indians than the whites. That's how I know I like Silas, first off. We, the whites, don't need friends. We're good.
We're good.
We're good. Yeah, so it was through Soule that the truth became known, because this fucking Chivington dude outranked him and was puppeteering, like pulling the strings on the narrative of this, and then Soule's like,
spinning
whoa.
Yeah.
And if it weren't for two prominent members of like Soule's crew, including YB or whatever the fuck the Colorado guy's name is, backing him up, yeah, this might not have worked out for him either. So even though he was jailed, intimidated, threatened, and even shot at, Soule refused to compromise himself and made his voice heard through reports that reached all the way from Colorado to Washington and even to the floor of the U.S. Senate. Even with the bloody carnage of the Civil War, the brutal atrocities at Sand Creek still shocked the nation. So despite everything that was fucking going on in the world at that time, in people's literal backyards, this was still shocking.
They were just like, ooh, look what happened in Colorado. That's fucked up.
And I feel like there's contribution of just like the consistent propagandizing that the American government and the army had been doing around this time too, because it's like we see how Chivington played right out of the playbook that I'm certain was played over and over and over again as we made land grabs to establish the United States, where it's like these people are violent. We have to go defend our women and children and take them out.
Dude, it's the same playbook that's happening
played
today.
Right now. And you roll up on a bunch of old people and kids and they have like rocks and sticks. Yeah. And it's like, we better take them all out. It's just, I feel like Silas's testimony was almost like a crack for people in that propagandizing. And obviously this didn't create like an overnight revolution. But if people are shocked by this story, typically people who take in media that's like really different from what they'd been told or really different from what they'd been accustomed to thus far, it does kind of make you go back over other stories you've heard.
All of this can be applied to today.
Literally.
All of it.
All of it. That's what made this so fucking fascinating to me is it's just like, oh my God, this all applies literally right now. And like, we've seen it happen. Let's learn from our fucking mistakes. For fucking once. So, yeah, I mean, it shocked people because I think that so many of the stories of what was going on had been totally whitewashed. And so people could just accept that, yeah, for you to have this land of opportunity with your family, there's a lot of blood that's being spilled. Yeah. And if you know about that, you might not want to help us own all this. So we're not going to fucking tell you, you know? During hearings in Denver, Captain Soule's integrity and unwavering testimony turned the tide against the once popular Chivington and the other men who participated in the massacre and mutilations at Sand Creek. Captain Soule fully realized that telling the truth about the massacre could cost him his life, even telling a good friend that he fully expected to be killed for his testimony.
He's risked his life like a dozen times at this point.
Basically, he was raised risking his life because his parents were doing it. So this is just, it's like, of course I'm going to fucking do this. Spoiler alert, he was killed, but not immediately. So
I didn't mean to laugh, but
no, I mean, he knew
he was gonna get killed eventually if he kept this up.
He fully fucking knew he was gonna get killed. So by January, Chivington had retired from the army because like he got so dragged. Like if we had TikTok, then Chivington would have been viral and just eviscerated by Gen Z. Like, he was laughed out of the army. He was like shamed out of his entire career. So he couldn't be tried in a military court because he retired because he got fucking, I don't know. It's like funny, but it's also really shitty because since he couldn't be tried in a military court,
accountability.
He wasn't convicted of criminal charges because of the key role that he played in the Civil War. So they were like, we're going to look over here about that. Oh, God. But he ended his career in disgrace. He wanted to become a governor or a politician, but his political hopes were destroyed once he became known as the Butcher of Sand Creek.
Man, I wish there were consequences for politicians today.
I know. Wouldn't it be great? Chivington, of course, never forgave Silas for what he considered a betrayal. It's like, you didn't back the blue, dude. You're a rat.
That is a thin blue line.
It's very thin. So Soule's unfortunate death didn't take too long to happen. On April 1st, 1865. Did he
get a MRSA infection?
No, he didn't. But he did get married to this sweet gal named Teresa Hersa. And the marriage only lasted 22 days because he got killed. Oh. So April 23rd, 1865, 2 months after testifying before the military commission investigation about the Sand Creek massacre.
An apparent gunshot wound to the head.
Yeah. Jesus. Soule was on duty as provost marshal, so military police in Denver. He went to investigate the sound of gunshots, which had evidently been fired to lure him out to investigate.
Oh my God, it was an apparent gunshot wound.
I mean, they weren't trying to spin it as a suicide. This was very obvious. But yes.
The red string.
Yep, it's all connected. At around 10:30 p.m., with his pistol drawn, Soule went around a corner in what is now downtown Denver and faced Charles Squire and another assassin named William Morrow. Soule fired the first shot, wounding his left shoulder, but Squire fatally fired a bullet that entered Soule's right cheekbone, passing backward and upward and lodging in the back part of the head, killing him instantly.
Wow.
They were apparently only about 4 feet apart from each other during this little duel. Squire dropped his gun and fled before being arrested, even though one of the provost guards reached the captain in less than a minute after the gunfire. So, like, it happened really fast, but Squire still got away. He was eventually...
Weird.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like, oh my God, Silas is bleeding all over the sidewalk. I think they were just attending to him first.
Oh.
Because he was dead, shot in the head, bleeding everywhere. They probably just were not prioritizing chasing Squire because it's like, holy fuck.
So you don't think it was like a, oops,
I don't think they were
away.
in on it. No, I don't think that. I really don't think that they were in on it.
Okay.
Because he was like pretty beloved.
And they're in Colorado. So yeah.
But the officer who captured Squire was okay. So Squire got caught. Sorry, I skipped this line. Squire is eventually captured and brought back for a court-martial, like military trial because you killed a military officer, basically. But the officer who captured Squire was found dead in a Denver hotel of what was presumed to be a staged drug overdose orchestrated by Squire to escape.
Oh my God.
So Squire escaped to New York where his brother harbored him, and he held a series of jobs and tried to rejoin the army but was rejected. Never caught.
Dude.
Because we just didn't have good enough record keeping out of state.
Also, like,
You could
Civil
just
War.
go. Yeah.
Everything was so fucked.
Yep.
Oh my God.
So he got away with it, but 5 years later, his legs were crushed in a railroad accident. He later died from gangrene in 1869. So bye, bitch. Bye. Tom's house was broken into, and 5 years later, his legs were crushed in a railroad accident, and he later died from gangrene in 1869. And his car rolled 3 times. Yeah, but a lot of stress. It was strongly believed that the 2 assassins going after Silas had been hired by Chivington, as both men had served in Chivington's army.
No
they figured out.
shit.
Yeah,
Oh, you connected the dots. Good job.
Whoa. But this was never proven, but like he totes
proven.
did. Yeah, it's
Consider it proven.
Check. Silas's funeral was attended by a massive crowd with both military and civilian support. In 1867, he was posthumously promoted to the rank of major in recognition of his meritorious service. The Cheyenne and Arapaho tribes still visit his grave every year during the annual healing run to honor victims of the Sand Creek Massacre. And there is a plaque near the location of his murder in downtown Denver.
Wow.
Yeah, we're going to be in Denver in July. I want to check it out.
Gotta go.
Isn't that a fascinating story?
It is.
And also so topical.
Very applicable.
Mm-hmm. You know, just some
Too
stuff to noodle
applicable.
on if we're having a hard time.
Oh my God. The whistleblowing.
I know.
So many ties to current events.
So listen, save TikTok and keep sharing and, bearing witness, because you too will have to blow a whistle one day.
Also, TikTok is not going anywhere anytime soon. I feel like there's going to be endless lawsuits.
Oh, yeah. They just filed.
Stupid fucking reach to begin with. So
I also love, though, that Mitt Romney even was like, yeah, we moved to ban it because y'all were talking about Palestine too much on TikTok. And we don't want you to know that shit.
Said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, totally said the quiet part out loud. And I was like, listen, Romney, there's a reason why I kind of want to see you naked.
Listen, Daddy Romney.
Listen, Daddy. Thank you for just
My poop
fucking
will
laying
come
it out. Because we all knew. We all knew what you were doing. Oh my God. Mitt Romney. Anyway, thank you so much for listening.
On that note,
thank you to us.
Thank you to us. And yeah, check out the what's it called? The FSF, the Freedom of Hold on, I'm scrolling up. You got a lot of notes.
I know, I'm sorry. It was just too good.
Freedom of the Press Foundation, FPF. Got it. There we go.
Woo, check them out.
Check them out. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Wine and Crime. Our cover art is by Danielle Sylvan. Music by Phil Young and Corey Wendell. Editing by Jonathan Camp. Our production manager is Andrea Gardner. For photos and sources, check out our blog at wineandcrimepodcast.com. You can follow us on all the socials at Wine and Crime Pod. If you have questions, answers, or recommendations to share, email us at wineandcrimepodcast@gmail.com. Episodes are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts. It is the best way to spread the word. If you'd like to show your support and get access to all sorts of wine-fueled bonus content, visit our Patreon page. Cheers!
Whether you're looking to build a website for your business, your hobby, your podcast, or just for fun, Pair Networks is your go-to web hosting partner. Not only do we have the lowest domain price in the industry, starting at just $11, we've got hundreds of stunning website templates to help you stand out from the crowd. You're not a techie? Not a problem. With our easy DIY site builders, you can launch your impressive website without any technical know-how. And when it comes to security and updates, don't worry, we've got you covered. Our 24/7 US-based customer support is the best in the industry. Check out pair.com today to learn more. PAIR.com.